It's been a campaign few expected. The result, a true cliffhanger. What happens next? We'll begin to find out in just a few minutes. Welcome to Election Night in Alberta on the CBC.
I'm Rachel Notley, and I'm running to be your premier.
This is not an NDP province. I don't believe that, the voters of Alberta want to see an NDP coalition or an NDP government.
A vote for any other party is a vote for much higher taxes on our families, much higher taxes on all of us.
This is an election about trust. A government that has defaulted, betrayed the trust of Albertans for 30 years.
Good evening and welcome to our viewers in Alberta and right across the country watching on CBC News Network. I'm Rob Brown. Well, it began 28 days ago with very little enthusiasm. It's turned into a campaign unlike any other in Alberta's recent history. The polling numbers catching almost everyone off guard. The leaders' debate making it clear the threat to a political dynasty in Canada's most conservative province is apparently coming from the left. From Lougheed to Getty to Klein to Stelmach to Redford, most Albertans have only known a PC government. For almost 44 years, the Tories have held the reins of power. So, does that change tonight? Who will form the next government? Will it be another majority or the first minority Alberta has ever seen? Can Jim Prentice lead the PCs to a 13th consecutive mandate, or will Rachel Notley ride an orange wave to the first NDP government in Alberta? Can the Wild Rose under Brian Jean do what the party could not under Danielle Smith? Do David Swan's Liberals win any seats at all? We have some of our best reporters assembled, standing by to steer us through all the developments as they unfold tonight. Kim Tredacity is with the PCs here in Calgary. Brian Labby's up in Fort Mac with the Wild Rose. Marion Warnica with the NDP. Boy, our hopes high in Edmonton tonight. And Kyle Bax is with the Liberals in Calgary. Plus, as you can see, the CBC's Ian Hannah-Mansing making a special appearance. He's going to join us live from Calgary. He'll be gathering live reaction from Albertans as the results come in. And our CBC radio election special is currently on the air. It's being hosted by Donna McKelligan. There are about 2.5 million eligible voters in Alberta, but just how many of them went to the polls today? That's going to be a big part of the story tonight. And our John Archer covers the legislature. He's been on the campaign trail, and he's here to bring you those results the moment we get them. Who's in? Who's out? How is it all going to play out? We'll hear from John in just a second, and to help us understand what all of those raw numbers mean is our crack political panel here. We've brought together three of the top analysts our province has to offer. Bruce Cameron is a veteran Alberta pollster. Susan Elliott is a card-carrying PC, and she managed Alison Redford's successful comeback campaign back in 2012. And Corey Hogan is a political strategist and former executive director of the Alberta Liberal Party. Lots to talk with them about tonight. Lots to tweet about tonight, too. Our CBC Online team is here with us. As you can see in studio, they have launched a live election chat feature. So fire up the tablet as you watch the TV show, because we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what your thoughts about what you're seeing as the night unfolds. Christina Barnes is here as well. She's going to be keeping an eye on those ever so important social media streams. She's going to bring us what people around the province are saying with a particular eye to interesting tweets from newsmakers. Think Danielle Smith and what she might be saying tonight. It promises to be a fascinating and very fast-paced night, so before those results start pouring in, we want to start with a little context. Here's Alberta's political landscape. When this election was called, you can see it's awash in Tory blue. Of the 87 seats in Alberta, the PCs held 72, the Wild Rose 5, the Liberals 5, and the NDP 4 seats. There was one independent as well. But tonight is all about the future, not the past, and the magic number you want to look for, it's going to be right here at the bottom of that banner. Yes, it's 44. That is the number of seats needed to form a majority in the province of Alberta. That leading and elected seat count will stay on your screen throughout the night, and it's going to change as the night unfolds. We haven't seen any results yet, so I want to take it back over to the panel for some opening comments. And Corey Hogan, you're closest to me. You're on the left, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed how we position you.
Well, that seems appropriate, yeah, given my background.
Opening thoughts on what you're expecting to see tonight.
Well, we've seen big turnout. It seems like people are excited. The NDP and PCs both seem they're going to win. Or they think they're going to win. One of them is going to be wrong. we could argue, but why bother? We're going to find out in about 1 hour here.
It's going to come in probably less than that. Haven't seen a result yet. Those polls just closed. We're expecting them to come in any minute now. Susan Elliott, there's a dynasty hanging in the air tonight. This is your party. What are you expecting to see?
Well, I just don't know, and that's why I'm so nervous. I'm more nervous this year than I was even in 2012. I mean, we could see the Alberta Party win a seat. We don't know whether the government will be NDP or PC. We don't know if the Liberals will survive until tomorrow. So it's a very interesting night. It's
going to be a lot of fun, and perhaps the only people who are more nervous than the partisans and the politicians are the pollsters. Bruce, you've been in this.
Yes.
Chair, before you know the drill, a lot of surveys in the last week here had the NDP way out in front, but you've been cautious.
Yes, we said, well, a lot of the surveys have said that 38% of people want to vote NDP, but this election is the strangest one I've ever been involved in, and it reminds me of Hunter S. Thompson, who said that when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. But the pros are scratching their head over this one because there's so many splits that could happen tonight in so many ridings that it's difficult to predict. And the NDP vote, although they've got a lot of support, is stranded in Edmonton to a large extent. We'll see if they can make a breakthrough outside of Edmonton in places like Calgary.
Yeah, we're watching for those numbers to start coming in any moment. Thank you three. We'll be talking to all of you as the night proceeds. Okay, so the real action tonight, as always, is going to be the reaction at the party headquarters. Will the PCs be smiling in downtown Calgary, or will they face defeat for the first time since 1971? Kim Trinacity, you have covered the PCs on election night several times in the past. Have you ever sensed such concern around a PC campaign on election night?
In short, no. People are starting to trickle in here to PC headquarters in downtown Calgary. Not a huge crowd yet, but there's a little bit of trepidation I sense. But that could be that it's very early going. We don't even have any results. The PCs and Jim Prentice needed to convince Albertans that after 44 consecutive years of power, they still had it in them, that they were still capable of governing Alberta. Prentice was looking for the 13th consecutive majority win for the PCs. Will he get it? That remains to be seen. He became leader last fall, and when he did, he put Alberta on notice, he said, and the province was under new management. We'll find out tonight if Albertans embraced that message of new management, believed him, or have rejected it. Rob?
Thank you, Kim. Okay, so the big question that we'll also find out about tonight, the impact of that mass floor crossing that we saw back in December. 11 members of the Wildrose Caucus crossing the floor to sit with the government caucus. It really sparked a rebirth that a lot of people didn't expect to see of the Wildrose Party. And in Fort McMurray, Conklin tonight, the riding that the new leader is hoping to achieve, Brian Jean, that is our Brian Labby. And Brian, what's the view from Fort Mac tonight?
Well, the big question here, of course, is whether rookie leader Brian Jean can move this party ahead and, of course, build on the 17 seats that the party picked up in 2012. Of course, we know the party was on the brink of collapse late last year after the defection led by Danielle Smith and a couple of floor crossers, reducing that caucus to just 5 seats. We know the Wildrose Party has a lot of support in rural Alberta, so the question, again, whether Brian Jean can pick up support in Alberta's bigger communities, the big cities. That's the question mark. And of course, they were the official opposition. The question Albertans will answer tonight is whether they think the Wildrose Party is ready to govern.
Reduced down from 17 in opposition to 5, as you say, Brian. Only 3 of them deciding to run again. It could be quite the comeback story for sure in Fort Mac. Thank you, Brian. Well, if there is hope high in this province, it couldn't be higher than it is in Edmonton right now. And Marion Warnica is with the surging NDP, if the polls are to be believed. And Marion, good vibe in that room tonight, I expect.
They are definitely set up for a huge party. As you can see behind me, a few people trickling in. They're expecting 1,700 people to be here tonight. Think about that. Coming into this race, most Albertans would have said they had never even heard of Rachel Notley. Now, she and her NDP and their orange wave are being likened to a political tsunami. Now, she has said time and again throughout this campaign that she is running to be the next premier of this province. That's an idea that really seemed almost laughable at the beginning of this campaign. But after 3 years of Tory scandals, the PC dynasty looks tired. And the NDP coming in with their message of hope, with their young enthusiasm, are starting to be seen as an alternative, a reasonable alternative for voters here. We're going to find out, though, if that surge in opinion polls that we've seen for the NDP leading into this election will actually translate into votes, and whether or not the people in this room will indeed make history tonight as they're expecting.
All right, a lot of people comparing what we're seeing here in Alberta to the 2011 surge of the NDP federally under the late Jack Layton. We will see if that materializes tonight. Over to Liberal HQ, where Kyle Bax is standing by. Now, if the Liberals are to survive, many of the pundits believe, Kyle Bax, they have to hold on to their vote. A lot of that vote expected to bleed to the surging NDP. So what is the room like there tonight?
Well, Rob, there's very low expectations. At the end of the night, we may be able to count the Liberal seat total on one hand. In each of the ridings where the party feels like they have a chance, they're facing a very tight race, and so the party could be shut out altogether. The big threat is the NDP and the orange wave. Rob, party officials are telling me they're very concerned that Liberal supporters will move over and vote NDP.
All right, couldn't even put together a full slate for this campaign. Wow, has the prospect for the Liberal Party changed over time? Thank you, Kyle Bax. All right, let's check back in with John Archer for a first word on some key ridings to watch tonight. We'll call them the bellwethers, where the races are expected to be telling in terms of how the whole night is going to play out.
That's right, Rob. I picked out 3 ridings and why they are important to everybody, except we do have some results that have just come in to the CBC election desk, and so some early numbers have started to come in to the CBC, and here we go. Our first results of the night come from Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. Mike Allen, running for re-election for the Tories, a controversial politician. A couple of years ago, he was caught in a Minneapolis hotel room trying to solicit a couple of prostitutes. And they turned out to be undercover vice police officers. He pleaded guilty. He is running for re-election tonight, and he has a slim lead right now on Tanny Yo of the Wild Rose Party. That's in Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. Some other early results that we have coming in. West Yellowhead, Robin Campbell, the finance minister, running for re-election in Jim Prentice's cabinet. He has an early lead over Eric Rosendahl of the NDP. This is a potential area where the NDP are looking to possibly make a big statement if they can take out Robin Campbell tonight. He, of course, introduced the budget earlier this year that many people thought was pretty unpopular. In Calgary East, Mo Amory running for re-election for the Tories, a long-time MLA in Calgary East. He has a lead right now over Ali Wasi of the Wild Rose, and so early results coming in, Rob. Hard to tell exactly what's going on anywhere because they are small numbers, but those are the early results that we have so far.
Very small numbers for sure. And just an anecdote about how heated this campaign is. Mo Amory's campaign releasing in the last 24 hours or so details about some sign damage. Now, this is pretty typical for any election campaign, but really playing up the vitriol with which the people who destroyed those signs did it. Okay, thank you, John. We'll be touching base as soon as some more results come in. In the meantime, let's get the perspective from the street with the CBC's Ian Anamansing. I'm so happy to have you in town, Ian, and you've been out there talking to Flames fans, I'm sure. You're seeing a lot of them in the jerseys passing by, but also Albertans about what could be a monumental shift to the left tonight. It must be a head-scratcher for you coming into our province. What are folks out there telling you?
Well, the streets are empty right now. There have been quite a few people walking past me in the Kensington neighborhood, but a lot of those, as you say, on their way to bars and pubs and other places to watch the Flames game. We heard a big cheer when the Flames scored that early goal. Hopefully, though, a lot of people are also taking some time to watch these election specials because, you know, earlier today, I went out to one of the polling stations in the Calgary Fort riding, and I was really struck by the enthusiasm of the people as they went to vote. People who were voting for the PCs, voting for the NDP, knowing that they weren't sure what the results were going to be, but we heard from various people that they really felt that this time around, easy to understand, their vote actually mattered, that it would count, that it could make a difference. And, you know, we hear so much cynicism, Rob, about politics and politicians, and you hear people right across the country, from BC all the way to Atlantic Canada, sometimes say that they feel kind of alienated from politics and away from the system. Well, today I kept running into people who felt very engaged in the process, who felt like their voice actually will be heard at the end of the night. And that included a couple who had moved here to Alberta from Dubai about 6 years ago because they said they wanted to live in a conservative place. They meant small c conservative. And I said, you know, at the end of the night, the government may actually not represent your values. And they paused for like half a beat and said that doesn't matter. That's the way democracy works. We hope that the Progressive Conservatives win. We're happy with whatever result Albertans come up with. So nice to see, as an outsider visiting today, so many people embracing democracy, and hopefully they're doing that tonight around their television sets as well, Rob.
It was a universal theme for me today as well. And yeah, say what you will about the outcome. It's great to see everyone engaged across the board in this great province tonight. Thank you. All right, just want to reference the early results coming in right now. As you can see, the PC's holding a lead for elected and a leading, and the Wild Rose on the board for the first time. We're looking at 2 seats currently. And John, I just want to get back to you quickly on what we're seeing. Can you break some of it down for us?
Yeah, some early results, as you mentioned, coming in already. First, we have Airdrie. Peter Brown, the mayor of Airdrie, running for the Tories in this election. This is a riding that was vacated by Rob Anderson of the Wild Rose, but he crossed the floor to the PCs. He said he wasn't going to run again. Peter Brown has an early lead over Chris Noble of the NDP in Airdrie. Some more results coming in are from Banff Cochrane. Scott Wagner with the Wild Rose Party. He has a lead over Cameron Westhead of the NDP. These are very early results, but Banff Cochrane certainly expected to go to the Wild Rose tonight. Ron Casey, though, is the Tory that's running for re-election in that race. Drumheller-Stettler. This is one of the bellwether ridings that I was hoping to be able to point out to you, and here it is. Rick Strankman and Jack Hayden are facing off again. In 2012, Jack Hayden was a cabinet minister for Alison Redford. He lost to Rick Strankman for the Wild Rose Party. Hayden signaled that he was going to run again, and here he is tonight. This is a face-off between the two again, and with one poll reporting, it's a 1-vote lead, Rob. Yeah. I think we're going to watch that one tonight.
Well, it is early for sure, but there are so many close races. Just want to note that the NDP is now on the board. We've had, 78 ridings still to report any results at all, so it's very early, but a 3-way and so far very tight race. The PC's out in front, and as you can see, the NDP now on the board. Okay, social media, it's a big part of the spectrum of any discussion these days. You heard the perspective from the street. A lot of people engaged, says Ian Hannamansing, and certainly in social media. And Christina, you've been pulling together some early indications of that.
And a lot of people just happy to have gotten the chance to get out and vote. A lot of people being encouraged by other people to vote. And of course, if you don't vote, you can't complain. So voting may be the best way to complain. And we'll see how many Albertans have complaints about the PC government and do make some changes. As we move on, voting, democracy for the win. Obviously, that is the key here tonight. Never been so excited during an Alberta election, says Megan. Orange, orange, orange. Guess who she may have voted for? And excited to watch the AB Votes results start rolling in. Says Kelly, I may be new to the province, but a potential shakeup is always fun to watch. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying fun to watch on TV, but they can't handle it because it's so exciting. They got to fire up the tablet as well. And we can help you out with that. I'm just going to change the screen here. We have a live chat. I can't change the screen. Oh, technology has tricked me, Rob.
Technology works just fine on your desktop at home.
Yes.
So the live chat will be there
I'm
for sure.
not in charge of the live chat, and that's a good thing. But here it is, people starting to weigh in on our live chat, and our crews in CBC in Edmonton, in Calgary also involved in that. So do tune in there and stick with us as well, Rob.
All right, Christina, thank you. Those results coming fast and furious. Now let's get back to John, who has the latest on that front.
Rob, we've got some more early results coming in, and this one is in Calgary Mountain View. Mark Halati out to an early lead over Terry Wong with the Wild Rose Party. As you mentioned, though, earlier, this is David Swan's riding, the interim Liberal leader. And as you mentioned, questions tonight about whether the Liberals are going to win any seats. And it wasn't too long ago that they were the official opposition. Mark Halati for the Tories trying to win this seat back because he was a member of the PC caucus under Ralph Klein. Strathcona Sherwood Park, Dave Quest is running for re-election. We don't have any results from Strathcona Sherwood Park yet, but this is one of the ridings around Edmonton that people are going to watch to see if the NDP can actually push out of the city and grab a couple of seats. Calgary East, Mo Amory still holding on to that lead over Ali Wasi with the Wild Rose Party. Mo Amory, a longtime Tory MLA, running for re-election. Back in the Alison Redford days, he was one of those MLAs that kind of stepped out of caucus and was encouraging the leader, or at least someone, to tell the leader to step down, and eventually we all know what happened with Alison Redford. Edmonton Manning, Heather Sweet for the NDP, out to an early lead over Gurcharan Garcha of the PCs. And this is a riding that was previously held by Peter Sandhu for the Tories. He lost the nomination to Gurcharan Garcha, but Heather Sweet for the NDP, she has an early lead. That race is expected to go to the NDP. In Lesser Slave Lake, Pearl Callahason, a long-time Tory MLA. She is out to a lead over Danielle Larrivee of the NDP. This is a riding that the PCs certainly expect to hold. Pearl Callahason has won her elections by wide margins in the past, and they certainly expect that she will again tonight. Barrhead, Morinville, Westlock, Tristan Turner with an early lead over Glenn Van Dyken with the Wild Rose Party. Tristan Turner is a journalist, a columnist with the Morinville News, and he's in this race tonight, the first time running politically. He's out to an early lead in the riding we like to call BMW. In Livingstone McLeod, Evan Berger for the Tories, trying to get back to the legislature. He was a Tory MLA. Pat Steer for the Wild Rose Party is running for re-election. Evan Berger is out to an early lead, but that's just one poll reporting so far, Rob.
All right, so speaking of early leads, we're seeing a lot of blue on the board, a lot of people at home wondering what's going on there. In terms of where the NDP is expected to pick up its vote share, it is, of course, Edmonton, the capital. We now have an independent on the board. I suspect that's Joe Anglin. But yes, we haven't seen a lot out of Edmonton in terms of results yet. Only one riding reporting so far, Corey, but the trend is not going in the direction early on that many expected that it would. Your response?
Well, when you look at the three ridings the NDP have on the board, two of them they really have absolutely no business winning. So I would certainly not say it's not going that way.
What are those?
Then we are looking at Grand Prairie, Wapiti, and Barrhead, Morinville, Westlock. Those are both Tory strongholds, and they should be Tory strongholds. What I also find interesting is how tight some of those races are. I saw Susan, you did a mini fist pump when you saw Mike Allen's results there. But it's close, and it was 5 votes, I think, separated first and third place there.
What does that indicate if someone like Mike Allen, he pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitutes, they were undercover police officers, can hold his seat tonight, potentially?
I don't actually think that's the issue in Fort McMurray. Fort McMurray tends to have very low voter turnout, and as a consequence, it's really about ground game and getting out your vote. And so Fort McMurray is going to be more about that. Mike is very popular in Fort McMurray, and I don't actually think that his past indiscretion has hurt him all that much.
Big question is whether they hold Fort McMurray. Conklin, Don Scott,
that's the bigger
minister
question.
going up against Brian Jean, a leader. I just want to clarify something. We saw the independent on the board a moment ago. You'll notice it's gone. It was a candidate running in Stephen Mandel's riding of Edmonton Whitemud. I didn't recognize his name, with all due respect to him, and he has since dropped off the board. We were only looking at one poll reporting, to be clear. Bruce, your read on the numbers we're seeing so far?
I think what you're seeing, it's very early, obviously, but what you're seeing is the power of incumbency. And the PCs, if they want to retain power, even in a minority government situation, all of those incumbents who are well known, Mike Allen in Fort Mac, Mo Amory in Calgary East, Robin Campbell in Yellowhead, even Pearl Callahason, they have to hold their seats based on the power of their personality, the understanding of the people in that area that that's a representative they want. And if they do that in the areas outside the cities, and they can hold Calgary, we haven't seen many Calgary results yet, then I think they're on their way potentially to a minority government at least.
To your line of thinking, a lot of obviously incumbents in Calgary for the PCs. It's Fortress Calgary. We'll get back to you guys in just a sec. John has some more results.
That's right, Bob. We have numbers coming in now from Calgary Hayes. Rick McIver, a cabinet minister under Jim Prentice, a cabinet minister under Alison Redford as well. A popular city councillor when he was a city councillor in the city of Calgary. He's out to a healthy lead early over Bob Mailloux of the Wild Rose Party. If the Tories were to lose Calgary Hayes, there would be big problems for the Tories. Calgary Foothills, Jim Prentice, the leader of the Progressive Conservatives for the past 6 months or so. He's out to an early lead over Ann Wilson of the NDP. Prentice expected, of course, to win his riding tonight in Calgary Foothills. Some more early results coming in from Calgary Elbow. This is another race that many people are going to be watching tonight. Gordon Dirks, the education minister, appointed by Jim Prentice before he was actually elected. He won this race in a by-election over Greg Clark. The leader of the Alberta Party, Megan Brown, with the Wild Rose Party, is in second place right now. Clark was expecting to pick up this seat. Right now, Gordon Dirks is out to a healthy early lead in Calgary Elbow. That is Allison Redford and Ralph Klein's riding, by the way. Calgary Northwest, Sandra Jansen is running for re-election there. She has a little bit of a healthy lead over Karen Mills of the NDP, but obviously just one poll reporting, but things are looking pretty good right now for the Tories, at least in Calgary.
Yes, and to Bruce's point, Fortress Calgary, the Tories have to hold those seats here, John, if they hope to hold on to power. Okay, thank you for those results. Drilling down to the details, riding by riding, I want to give you a sense of the big picture now. And these two graphics I'm about to show you will help illustrate something that's really important to this race. First, the share of the popular vote. And you can see that line, that's 43%. No party in Alberta's history has ever achieved a majority government without reaching 43% of the popular vote. And as you can see, the NDP currently out in front in spite of the seat count, which is changing down below at the bottom of your screen as we speak. But it's really shaping up as a three-way race, as many expected it would be. Early on, at least, we're not seeing more than, say, 5,000-6,000 votes at this time. It is early to throw these boards out, but we want to give you a sense of where the trends are going, a three-way race. The next board here talks about the brass tacks. We're talking seat change. So who's picking up, who's losing? Well, currently, as you can see, it's the PCs losing 10 seats, and that's coming over. It's going to the NDP. Now, here's the important thing to keep in mind about this board. The PCs can lose up to 17 seats and still retain a majority. And look, the numbers just changed again. They're losing another seat. So they're trending in that direction in spite of the fact that they're holding on to an early lead now. But you could see the NDP closing in a 2-seat leading and elected difference between them right now. And the Wild Rose really right on their heels. All right, so let's get back to PC headquarters with Kim Tredacity for the view on the ground at PCHQ. And Kim, I can see you have a guest with you. Who are we looking at there?
I sure do. I'm here with Morton Paulson. Morton, okay, first of all, let's say who you are. You called yourself the wagon master. You've been on the campaign trail probably every day since it started, right?
Since very close to the beginning. The bus has put on about 10,000 kilometers crisscrossing Alberta.
Okay, now we've been glued to the screen looking at the results. What are you thinking so far of what you see?
It's very, very early on, but I know that there's been tremendous energy, especially in the last week. We felt that out on the campaign trail, and I think that was buoyed by the energy of our leader, Jim Prentice. The number of stops, the number of people we spoke to, we felt movement in the last week.
Now, why do you think that is? I know that the messaging changed slightly in the last week.
Well, I think Jim Prentice was a very good communicator with a very clear message that Alberta faces a stark choice.
And that choice, he was targeted really at the Wild Rose and the NDP. He was kind of trying to make it a two-party race, right?
Well, that's right, but I think he made it clear that for Albertans who want to see Alberta continue to be successful with a moderate government that encourages the entrepreneurial spirit of this province, that the PCs are the choice.
Now, you know, these are really early results. It looks like what we're seeing is a three-way race. What do you think of that?
Well, it very much depends how the vote breaks out, and we saw that as we crisscrossed the province. Every riding is different. The vote breakout will be different in every riding. It's early yet tonight.
Okay, Morton Paulson, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again later on.
Thank you.
All right, Rob, back to you.
Thank you, Kim. Early, yes, but more than half the ridings reporting, and as you can see, the NDP have now jumped out in front. They are leading the race right now, which is really a reflection of that vote share of the popular vote graphic that I showed you. They were leading there as well. And in a very interesting race up in Edmonton right now, we're seeing something that a former deputy premier feared might come to pass, though it is, as we say, early, only 2 of 86 polls reporting in Edmonton Castle Downs.
Well, as we saw on the bar along the bottom of the screen, the NDP have raised up their numbers, and here's why. In Edmonton Castle Downs, Thomas Lukaszuk, former deputy premier, as you mentioned, Nicole Goring is out to an early lead for the NDP in this race. This is an interesting race because Thomas Lukaszuk stepped out of the Tory campaign for a little while and said that he was hearing on the doorsteps that corporate taxes should be raised and that loopholes in the fixed election legislation should be closed. So he was kind of running against the leader for a little bit there. Nicole Goring is out to an early lead for the NDP in Edmonton Castle Downs. Edmonton Gold Bar, this is a rematch of 2012 when David Dorward for the Tories took the riding. Marlon Schmidt, though, has been working for the last 3 years. He has been waiting for this night to have another shot at David Dorward in Edmonton Gold Bar. he's out to an early lead. Some more results from Edmonton. Edmonton Strathcona, no surprise here. Rachel Notley, the party leader, is out to a big lead. She's been an MLA since 2008. Of course, her father used to be the leader of the New Democrat Party about 35 years ago, killed in a plane crash before they became official opposition. Rachel Notley certainly expected to win Edmonton Strathcona. Edmonton McClung, Lauren Dack for the NDP has a lead over David Zhao for the Tories, who's running for re-election. David Zhao, a little bit of a controversial politician when it comes to expense claims. That got him jammed up more than once. Lauren Dack is out to an early lead in Edmonton McClung, a riding in West Edmonton. In Edmonton Manning, Heather Sweet still holding on to a pretty sizable lead over Gurcharan Garcha with the Tories. Gurcharan Garcha is trying to mount a challenge here as a first-time politician because this used to be Peter Sandhu's riding. Heather Sweet is out to an early and healthy lead. In Edmonton Beverly Clairview, Darren Billis running for re-election for the NDP. Only 4 seats in Edmonton that the NDP held. Darren Billis is one of them. No surprise early, although Tony Caterina was appointed as a candidate in this race by Premier Jim Prentice for the Tories, used to be a city councillor. Darren Billis looks like he's going to hang on to this seat tonight. The big numbers already.
Yeah, the story unfolding as we'd expected, most expected in the capital city. Thank you, John. But really, beyond the capital, we know that the NDP, if they want to form the next government, they're going to have to do better than just in Edmonton, where they are picking up a huge percentage of the popular vote, 64%, and they are currently in the lead, as you can see, and they are expanding that margin as we speak. But they have to make a breakthrough in Calgary. They have to penetrate Fortress Calgary if they want to form the next government, be it a minority or a majority. And you can see the breakdown in Calgary. In fact, their vote share is up across the province right now, very respectable on all fronts. So the NDP pulling out in front after an early lead for the Tories with just really a few ridings reporting and only a few polls in a lot of those ridings. But as the night goes on here and we're ticking down to almost all 87 ridings reporting, the NDP pulling out in front. They sit at 34. Remember, to secure a majority in this province, you need 44 seats. John, let's break down some more of the results coming in right now.
Well, we're getting some more results and some ridings that we haven't heard from yet. First, Calgary-Acadia, Brandy Payne for the New Democrats is leading Jonathan Dennis. Jonathan Dennis, another controversial politician tonight. That's because just a week ago, he was asked to step down as Justice Minister by Jim Prentice, and that's because he was going through some court proceedings with his estranged wife. And yesterday in Calgary and in Edmonton, all over the province, all over the country, the details of the testimony during those court hearings were splashed across the newspapers and all over the internet. Jonathan Dennis stayed in as the Tory candidate. Right now, he's losing, but only by a few votes, to Brandy Payne of the New Democrats. Calgary-Klein, Craig Coulihan has a lead over Jeremy Nixon for the Wild Rose Party. You'll see that Kyle Fawcett is in 3rd place. He's a cabinet minister that's running for re-election tonight. But the NDP must be really hopeful seeing a result like this early on. Craig Coulihan out to an early and a little bit of a healthy lead in Calgary-Klein. They certainly targeted Kyle Fawcett in this, and this was expected to be a 3-way race. But right now, Craig Coulihan is off to an early lead in Calgary-Klein. Calgary Varsity, Stephanie McLean for the NDP. She has an early lead over Susan Billington for the Tories. New Democrat strategist told me some time ago that Stephanie McLean was a star candidate for them. They were keying on Calgary Varsity. They thought they could take it in the early going. Stephanie McLean has a little bit of a healthy lead over Susan Billington for the Tories. Also, some early results coming in from Lethbridge West. Shannon Phillips for the NDP. This is a rematch of 2012. Greg Weddick for the Tories running for re-election tonight. He beat Shannon Phillips in 2012 in that election. Phillips, though, did not stop campaigning, has been working towards tonight. She's off to an early and a healthy lead. Shannon Phillips, were she to win tonight, she'd return to the legislature. She used to work there about 10 years ago in the NDP caucus. Medicine Hat, Bob Warner for the NDP is out to a healthy lead over Val Olson for the Wild Rose Party. Medicine Hat is another one of those ridings, obviously outside of Edmonton, that the NDP are certainly looking to make a breakthrough in. If they're going to make a breakthrough in Lethbridge, they might make a breakthrough in Medicine Hat as well. Red Deer North, Kim Schreiner with the NDP has an early lead over Buck Buchanan with the Wild Rose Party. That is another good result that the NDP must be happy to see. And in Fort Saskatchewan, Vegreville, Jessica Littlewood for the NDP is leading Jackie Fensky, who's running for re-election for the Tories. That is an early lead, but very, very tight here. Fort Saskatchewan, Vegreville is probably going to be another tight race tonight. Also, Sherwood Park, Annie McKittrick for the NDP is off to an early and a little bit of a healthy lead. You'll see the other two candidates here, Kathy Olson and Linda Osenchuk. They have a very interesting history in that they were both mayors of Sherwood Park, and Linda Osenchuk beat Kathy Olson in a municipal election. Kathy Olson ran for the PCs in the following provincial election. She's running for re-election for the Tories tonight. This was supposed to be a challenge between the two of them, but Annie McKittrick for the NDP is off to an early lead in Sherwood Park.
Everything trending orange right now. I mean, everything going in the direction that the NDP faithful is hoping it is. It's 34 minutes past polls closing, and look at the share of the popular vote. Again, 43% historically has secured a majority in this province. Currently, the NDP leading and elected in 40 ridings around the province. You need 44 seats to secure a majority. Right now, they're not at that 43% of the popular share, or the popular vote right now. They're only a few away from that. But in a tight three-way race, there is a possibility that the NDP could secure a majority government with less than that 43% threshold. It is looking very promising for that party right now. Could be looking at history being made in the province tonight. Seat change telling a big part of this story. Check it out. 37 seat increase over the 4 that the NDP held just a matter of, 6 weeks ago. A loss of 36 seats currently projected for the PCs. That went down to 37, up to 40 as we were speaking. Everything going in that direction. Not prepared to make the call. As of yet, we haven't seen enough of the results, but everything is pointing in the direction of an NDP government here in this province. John, this is a remarkable turn of events, and it's unfolding at a really fast pace. And so let's get back to those ridings where the story is really being told.
Yeah, some even more positive results for the NDP, starting with Edmonton Decor. Chris Nielsen for the NDP is off to a lead over Janice Sarich, who's running for re-election for the Tories, and that is a healthy lead. Edmonton Decor is a riding that the NDP were keying on tonight. Some more early results coming in. This time it's from Edmonton Mill Creek. Denise Woolard for the NDP has an early lead, very tight lead over Jean Zwazdeski for the Tories, a long-time MLA, started off as a Liberal MLA, crossed the floor to the Tories, Speaker of the House at dissolution. Right now, Woolard is holding on there for the NDP. Kathleen Ganley has a lead in Calgary-Buffalo for the NDP over Terry Rock for the Tories. Very small numbers, though, in Calgary-Buffalo, with just one poll reporting out of 78. Calgary-Buffalo is another riding that people are going to be watching tonight. In Calgary-Curry, Brian Malkinson with the NDP has a lead over Terry DeVries for the Wild Rose Party. Calgary-Curry is another riding that the NDP thought might be in play heading into tonight. They weren't really sure. There were some ridings in Calgary that they keyed on. Calgary-Curry was one that obviously they would be happy to pick up. And in Calgary Fort, Joe Ceci, former alderman in the city of Calgary, he's running for the NDP, a star candidate according to Rachel Notley. He has a lead over Jivan Mangat for the Wild Rose Party. Joe Ceci is expected to win tonight. In the early going, he has a pretty healthy lead over the Wild Rose candidate. Some more early results coming in that we can see coming from Edmonton Meadowlark. John Carson for the NDP with a substantial lead over Catherine O'Neill for the Tories. John Carson got into the race a little bit late. Catherine O'Neill has been working towards this. A former Globe and Mail reporter, Jim Prentice, always liked to talk about how proud he was to have her on the team. She is down big time already early in Meadowlark. In Edmonton Rutherford, Richard Feehan for the NDP has a healthy lead over Chris Labossiere. Chris Labossiere, another one of those candidates that was recruited to the Tory campaign. Richard Feehan right now off to a healthy lead in that riding. In Lac La Biche, St. Paul, Two Hills, David Hansen for the Wild Rose Party, a very slim lead over Catherine Harder for the NDP. If this is a tight race, boy, are there going to be some interesting tight races tonight. This is supposed to be Wild Rose stronghold and a Wild Rose hold tonight, but right now, very tight results. Edmonton, David Shepherd for the NDP off to an early and healthy lead over Laurie Blakeman for the Alberta Liberals. She's also kind of running for the Alberta Greens and for the Alberta Party. She's held this riding for a long time in the early going. She is down to David Shepherd for the NDP. And so lots of early results coming in. Things are trending towards that orange wave, certainly in Edmonton, but that was expected. But there are some other ridings that are really interesting
in Edmonton and in parts of the province that they need to pick up. You looked at Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, parts of Calgary. Calgary hasn't elected an NDP MLA since 1993. They are picking up where they need to get not only into the position of forming government, but majority territory. Check out the banner at the bottom of the screen here, John. Currently leading and elected in 51 ridings in this province. That is majority territory, but we want to break down for you exactly why we haven't gone there in the call just yet, because there are currently 57 ridings out of 87 in this province right now where the margin between first and second place is less than 100 votes. That is how close it is in this province tonight. But up to 52 across the board in this province, in regions where, as I say, the NDP has to break through in order to pick up seats, in order to form the next government. They are doing that, trending in that direction. In all fronts, really. Southern Alberta, the stronghold of the Wild Rose in certain sections for sure, and Fortress Calgary. We're seeing more than one NDP candidates leading in elected positions in Calgary. And wow, that margin has dropped considerably for the PCs. They are now sitting in third place, John. Third place to the Wild Rose, the party that they had apparently decimated just in December.
Yeah, that Unite the Right didn't work out so well, at least in the early going of the results that we're seeing so far tonight. We get some more earlier results coming in right now. Edmonton Meadowlark will roll through these numbers. These are new numbers. John Carson out to an even healthier lead over Catherine O'Neill, who's running for the Tories. Carson looks like he is expanding his lead in Edmonton Meadowlark. This would be a pickup because this used to be the riding that Raj Sherman used to hold for the Tories and for the Liberals. Also, we have some results from Edmonton Rutherford. Richard Feehan out to a lead over Chris Labossiere. Feehan, this is a riding that the NDP obviously think that they're going to win because the polls were trending towards Edmonton going completely orange. And in the early going tonight, this is certainly what we're seeing in Edmonton Rutherford, especially with Richard Feehan out to an early lead over the Tories. In Edmonton Southwest, Thomas Dang with a healthy lead over Matt Generou. Matt Generou running for re-election for the Tories. This was his first term as an MLA. This is supposed to be one of the safe seats for the Tories in Edmonton, and if the NDP were going to win this riding, then it was looking like a long night for the Tories. Thomas Dang has an early lead in Edmonton Southwest. In St. Albert, Marie Renault for the NDP has an early lead over Stephen Kahn, who is a cabinet minister in Jim Prentice's government, was a cabinet minister in Alison Redford's government as well. Right now, Mary Renault with the NDP looks like she is getting some good results coming in early in St. Albert. Also, in Leduc-Beaumont, Shay Anderson has a slim lead right now over George Rogers. George Rogers is a longtime Tory MLA in Leduc-Beaumont, former mayor of Leduc, but right now, this is a tight race that we're going to watch closely. Rob, in Leduc-Beaumont.
But again, ridings like that the NDP has to pick up, and they're out in front, and that I expect is trending heavily on social media right now.
Celebration and shock. I think a lot of people expecting it because of the polls, but really surprised that it actually has happened.
Surprised that the polls are right?
Yes, believe it or not. So a lot of people were thinking, oh, it'll just go like last time. It'll be completely different. But orange apparently is the new blue, celebrating holy nail biter, edge of the seat, full of hope. Certainly someone supporting the NDP, orange, orange everywhere. And looks like 40 years streak might come to an end now. I know it's early, but I haven't been this happy about election night news in ages. So many people watching here in Alberta and people watching across the country. I've seen tweets from people in Toronto, Vancouver. This person watching in a bar in British Columbia, a cheer just rose up as the NDP seat count rose above the PC count. So people across the country looking at these results and celebrating. A
lot of the NDP team from BC is in the province, the campaign manager for the NDP, an old hand at the NDP Arts of Politics in British Columbia. Thank you, Christina. And yes, as we've mentioned, the NDP well out in front, and I want to break down for you just how close some of these races are currently. This is the margin where it's less than 50 votes. It's less than 10 is what we're looking at with these 6 here. So if you have a flip-flop of just a few votes in a few polls, you could see the course of this election change to some degree, though really at this point, early going still, we have to say, the NDP way out in front. So yeah, there are some 50 ridings currently in the province where the margin is roughly too close to call. Okay, let's take it up to Edmonton. And this is where the story is unfolding. This is where it all had to happen. It had to start. They had to sweep Edmonton and build from there. And Marion, I expect that folks there are just jubilant with what they are seeing.
Absolutely. It has erupted. It's basically a pretty crazy scene down here. The people at this camp have actually already predicted an NDP majority. Those are numbers that, of course, our analysts are going to be watching very closely, but they're already celebrating. Now, that said, many of the more seasoned politicians in this party are still kind of pinching themselves, kind of holding their breath. I asked Ray Martin, who's the former leader of the NDP. He was leader when this party formed the opposition. The most power, the most popular that the NDP was in Alberta before this. And Ray turned to me and I said, well, what do you think? Because we just watched a huge jump in the lead for NDP. And he said, well, we still don't know what to expect. He was still very measured, very reasoned in his response, despite all these massive celebrations that we've been seeing here tonight. So yes, people are hopeful, but they're also holding their breath a little bit. They're also kind of waiting for that balloon not to burst, but
to fizzle a bit.
Measuring their expectations.
Yeah, a lot of those people, as we were just discussing, are folks from British Columbia, whereas they saw in 2013 they had an expected lead in the polls and it all came apart unexpectedly for them on election night. But they are well out in front at this point, John. A 10-seat leading an elected lead on the PCs, who've now pulled back. We think a couple of seats projected of the Wild Rose for the position of official opposition. And taking a look at a key riding here in Calgary, see what's over your shoulder here. This is one that was supposed to be a cakewalk for a so-called star candidate for the PCs.
This is a race that many people were watching tonight, and that's because of Rick Hansen, former police chief here in Calgary, a star candidate for the Tories. He is trailing right now to Ricardo Miranda of the NDP. And so Calgary Cross looking like it is going to go to the NDP, at least in the early going. Some early numbers, though, but in Calgary Cross, Rick Hansen is trailing right now to the NDP. In Calgary Glenmore, Anam Kazin has an early lead over Linda Johnson, who's running for re-election for the Tories. Anam Kazin is certainly looking to hang on to this riding. The NDP want to make that breakthrough into Calgary in the early going. It looks like they're doing so also in Calgary. Hawkwood, Michael Connolly with a little bit of a lead over Jason Lewan, who's running for re-election for the Tories. Michael Connolly is also, by the way, nominated to run federally for the NDP this fall. In the early going, it's a tight race, but Michael Connolly is giving Jason Lewan a little bit of a run for his money in Calgary Hawkwood. In Calgary Northern Hills, Jamie Kleinstuber with the NDP has a lead over Prasad Panda for the Wild Rose Party. That has Teresa Wu Pa, who's running for re-election for the Tories, in third place. In Calgary Southeast, Rick Fraser, running for re-election for the Tories, has a tight race with Miracle McDonald for the NDP. Rick Fraser trying to get re-elected tonight in Calgary Southeast. Rob?
All right, John, let's make it official. The people of this province have decided to ride an orange wave into uncharted waters. The CBC Decision Desk is prepared to make the call tonight. CBC is projecting that the next government of Alberta, Canada's most conservative province, will be a new Democrat government. The NDP will break the iron grip that the PCs have had on this province for more than 4 decades. Rachel Notley riding that wave. Folks in Edmonton, as you heard, some of them doubting what they were seeing on the boards. Marion, you're there now, and I'm expecting that people are going to start cheering any moment. They are heading to form government.
Absolutely. They have been cheering already, Rob. They've been cheering like mad down here. You know, this is something that, of course, many opinion polls, many pollsters, experienced analysts had predicted. But I think you'd ask the average Albertan, they didn't expect that this would actually happen. Now, certainly the people in this room were hoping it would happen. They were dreaming that would happen. We heard from Rachel Notley time and time again that she was running for premier of this province. And even at their last campaign stop, when I was there yesterday, as she walked in to speak to supporters there, they were greeting her as Premier Notley. This was a dream that they thought seemed almost impossible at the start of this campaign. Who would have thought that Albertans would have this kind of a vote tonight? certainly a huge celebration at this headquarters.
The first NDP government in this province's history, really the first government, it could be argued, that tilts left of centre. I should note that currently the Alberta Party is seeing a potential breakthrough. I'm assuming that's coming in Calgary Elbow. That party was supposed to be built as a progressive option for those who are not satisfied with the PCs. It really appears that those left of centre, those who were ticked off, those who had just had enough and wanted change, decided they would all coalesce around Rachel Notley. Really, I think, transcends the brand. It's more about the person than anywhere else, and she's leading to some of the results that we're seeing in some ridings today I don't think have ever been NDP.
Exactly. Another riding that is obviously outside of Edmonton, Lethbridge East. This is where Maria Fitzpatrick has a lead right now over Tammy Perlich for the Tories. Maria Fitzpatrick trying to pick this up for the NDP, and if Shannon Phillips wins Lethbridge West, obviously both Lethbridge ridings would have NDP MLAs going to the legislature. This is a dream scenario for the NDP at this point. Lethbridge West, here we are, Shannon Phillips with more than 1,000 vote lead over Greg Weddick for the Tories. Greg Weddick trying to get re-elected tonight. Shannon Phillips, though, has been working this riding for the last 3 years since she lost to Weddick in 2012, and early results show that all that work paid off. In Airdrie, Peter Brown, the former mayor of Airdrie, has a lead over Angela Pitt of the Wild Rose Party. Actually, Peter Brown is still the mayor of Airdrie, a popular mayor in Airdrie, and right now he's got a tight lead over Angela Pitt for the Wild Rose Party. We have an elected member for Edmonton Beverly Clairview, Darren Billis. Not really a surprise here, running for re-election for the NDP tonight. This is our first declared elected MLA tonight. Darren Billis taking down Tony Caterina of the Tories. Tony Caterina has a job to fall back on, though. He is an Edmonton City Councillor. He'll be going back to Edmonton City Council. Darren Billis will be going back to the legislature as the MLA for Edmonton Beverly Clairview. Rob?
The NDP with a commanding lead in the province of Alberta tonight. It will form the next government. The big question is whether or not it will be a minority or a majority. All signs pointing to a majority government. Rachel Notley will not have to get down on bended knee and find someone to work with. She may have 4 years to settle into the office, into the job, and certainly for the folks of Alberta who may be waking up to this new reality and wondering what just happened, to get to know her even more. You're seeing some of the reaction on social media, Christina.
And certainly some people not surprised by it, seeing what they expected, knowing that the NDP in their minds was going to be the victor tonight. Dear Alberta, I am so proud of you, says Tamara Lee. You've grown up, you've made your own choices no matter what anyone else said. I don't know if we're going to take some ribbing from the rest of the country for this vote tonight. Jay says you can't piss everyone off and hope to win an election. There are some harsh words on here tonight for Jim Prentice and the PCs, and this one follows suit. Jim Prentice is probably stuffing suitcases full of money and heading to the airport right now. Rob, we'll wait to see what Jim Prentice is doing right now. Maybe Kim Trinacity can keep us in touch there.
He's presiding over the end of a dynasty is what he's doing right now. No question the PCs are not going to form government tonight, and in fact they may not form the official opposition. I want to check in with the CBC's Ian Hanna-Mansing now, who's in the Calgary community of Kensington tonight. And Ian, I was just looking over at your live shot there, your two guests that you have with you. Neither one of them looks very happy right now.
Oh, you know what? I think they're trying to prove that they don't feel cold. They're talking about being Alberta and Saskatchewan farm boys. Brian and Jody, they were walking by. I showed them what the results were, and Brian, what was your reaction?
Wow, I think pretty surprising for most Calgarians, but at the same time, the last week, the way it's gone, I think a lot of people aren't too surprised. A bit of change perhaps was due in this province, and here we go.
Jody, you saw the surveys, the polls that we all saw, but you said it wasn't until today that you started thinking this could be for real.
That's right. It didn't really sink in for me. I went out today to vote, and there was more people at the polling station than I've ever seen in my years of voting. I've lived in Calgary 25 years. I think this is probably an interesting day for anybody that's lived here for any amount of time. I'm not quite sure how to, I can't wrap my head around what's happening right now, but I think that Brian's right. Change is likely good. It's surprising. I'll tell you, there's a lot of friends probably watching me on the news right now saying, yeah, I feel the same way.
Are you anxious at all? Excited?
Excited. I just think the PC's made a lot of missteps in this province that have really come to bite them. And whether this is the right direction or not, it's the direction we're going. And I guess I'm a little concerned about the direction we're going, but at the same time, kind of optimistic and say, whatever, let's just see what happens.
You live in an NDP province now.
We do. We do, and that's it. It'll see, the next 3, 6, 9 months, we'll see what plays out from this after today.
All right.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Jody, Brian, thank you very much for braving the cold and talking to us, and go back and enjoy the election coverage and the hockey game.
Thanks. Go Flames, go.
All right, Rob, back to you.
Ian, I detected a nervous laughter reaction to when you pointed out that they live in an NDP province. Now, I think a lot of Albertans feel that way right now. Thank you, Mr. Hannah-Mansing. All right, I just want to update to the ticker at the bottom of the board there. You may have noticed a little bit of red has popped up on the board, and we're telling you right now that currently it looks like Dr. David Swan, the interim Liberal leader, is going to hold on to his seat. We'll see if that happens tonight. In the meantime, the breakdown of why we're seeing the results that we're seeing tonight. This is vote change. This is the difference between this vote and the last vote, and look at that. Up 40% the NDP they're picking up across the province. The reverse is true with the PCs. They are losing in every part of the province. Their vote share has eroded. A lot of talk about the mighty PC machine being able to get out its vote in crucial battleground ridings. Perhaps that was the ace in the hole. Our own pollster here, Bruce Cameron, had predicted, well, not predicted, you do scientific surveys, and it found that most Albertans did put the NDP out in front. But a lot of Albertans at the same time were saying, yeah, I'm going to vote NDP, but I expect the PCs to win. And we were talking about that vote efficiency of the PCs. Where did it go?
Well, you know what? It will take a long time to analyze how the efficiency, once it was efficient, it wins a lot of seats. As soon as it's not, and people voted other parties,
it's over.
It collapsed. And but the NDP ran an error-free campaign. Rachel has just, I think now just put herself in the realm, in the same company as Ed Broadbent, more successful than Ed, and Jack Layton, in terms of doing this in Alberta. And, they ran not just an error-free campaign, but this, if there was a prize for political merchandising.
They had good humor along the way. That's always a good sign of confidence.
And all the constituencies on the back. That's a great piece of political
Motley
merchandising.
Crew, as opposed to Grim Jim, which is a lot of people are calling Jim Prentice Grim Jim. Look at the budget he brought in. Corey, let's talk about the efficiency factor. The NDP, they didn't have that much of an infrastructure 4 weeks ago. Where's it coming from?
Wave election, crazy things happen. But vote efficiency is funny because it's efficient until it's very not, and it's very not until it is, absolutely. And let me read just a couple. Acadia, Buffalo, Cross, Curry, Fish Creek, Fort, Glenmore, Greenway, Hawkwood. These are all Calgary ridings. And by the way, the list goes on. I just stopped. We talk about Fortress Calgary. I think we've got a new lord of the manor. I mean, the NDP have just dominated the cities at this point.
Susan, I'm curious about something that Bruce said. He said, the NDP ran a virtually perfect campaign, error-free. They made a big error, one that could have been made a big deal out of by the PCs, and you would expect them to. They came out and said, that budget that we proposed, our figures were off by 2 years. We wouldn't balance it for 2 years out, and I own that, then I move on. Any other campaign, the PCs, all about the facts and the figures, would have jumped down their throat and made hay with that. But Rachel Notley did the right thing, owned it, and it was a blip on the radar. Is that really an anecdote that sort of paints the picture of what happened writ large? People liked her.
Yeah, people liked her. They gave her the benefit of the doubt. Look, when you get a sea change like this, and we've seen it in Alberta before, I think what that means is that the people were ready for a change, just like in 1971. Every now and then, Albertans do this, and they've done it tonight. And
every 40 years.
Listen, I hope they're happy with what they voted for, because they've got an awful lot of candidates on here who never expected to be MLAs. So we're going to have some interesting days ahead.
And many of those candidates, by the way, were federal NDP candidates. Yeah. They were waiting for October, and the call came early, and they
I think they'll be staying home, don't you? Susan, quickly, the PCs, when this has happened historically, when we've seen a big change, the party's virtually wiped off the map. Social credit is no longer here. United Farmers gone. Is it too early to start writing them off at this point?
Yeah, I think it's too early to do that. And the night's not over yet. We still have a caucus left, albeit
meager,
somewhat smaller. But the PCs, they also have a national infrastructure with the Conservative Party. Some of those other parties you mentioned, they were local phenomenons. So the PCs are not a local phenomenon, so there is infrastructure there. We still have lots of members and lots of resources. So I don't think you'll see the party disappear. But it's clearly in for a bit of a house cleaning.
I really wonder if the party will disappear through perhaps another floor crossing, uniting the right, and some of those PCs heading over to sit with the Wild Rose Caucus. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. It is Alberta after all. Who would have thought? Just 28 days ago, Kim, the party in fourth place would be in first with a commanding lead tonight. We've been hearing about simmering tension for some time within the PC camp and this election campaign. Who do we park this at the feet of, if not Jim Prentice tonight?
Oh, I don't know. I think we haven't seen Jim Prentice. I'm not sure what time we're going to see Jim Prentice tonight. I think what I can sum up the mood here is extremely grim. While many people were expecting, of course, not to do well in Edmonton, they were anticipating that. But I think one of the big shocks for them is what happened in Calgary. They cannot believe what they're seeing. In fact, many people here have just found out, by looking at all the results, they're not going to have a job to go back to. Jim Prentice is watching the results. We don't know what time we're going to see him. We haven't seen any reaction. I don't hear anyone blaming anyone on the campaign or for calling the election, but I expect we're going to be hearing some of that, looking for accountability as it all sinks in as to what we're seeing here tonight. There aren't many people here tonight, no party stalwarts, maybe a few smattered here and there. They're off in a room, I think at the West and across the street, watching the results, and are probably stunned by what they see. But this campaign hinged on Jim Prentice. He called it. It was built around him, and I'm sure a lot of people want to hear some answers now. Rob?
He was the knight in shining armor. Just 6 months ago, he could do no wrong. He decided to bring in a budget that taxed people more, that cut some services, some would argue. He pulled the trigger on an early election a year before he needed to, and then the campaign was completely flat. They sit in third place right now, Kim. Do you expect that we're going to hear not only a concession speech from Jim Prentice tonight, but word that he will no longer be the party leader in a matter of days?
Well, did you say confession or concession?
Concession,
speech, Rob?
yes.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't think Jim Prentice left public life or left private life, his role as in the banking industry, to re-enter public life in politics to be leader of the third party in the Alberta legislature. I highly doubt that's a role that he wants to have going forward. That's not what he signed up for. I don't know what he's going to do. He might stick around for a bit, but I cannot anticipate him staying on for the longevity to see what happens to the party now. It just doesn't seem to be in the whole cards. It wasn't in the plan, I think, when he decided to re-enter politics at the provincial level. This is clearly not what he was expecting. So in addition to a concession speech, we might see him leave, or he might just make a very short speech and walk off. He will likely not talk to any media right afterwards, but I don't think at this point that we're going to see him around provincial politics for a long time after this, for sure.
All right, Kim, thank you. As for Jim Prentice, will he be one of the 13 currently projected who will be sitting in the legislature? Well, he is currently leading in Calgary Foothills, as you can see. The margin pretty thin, though, 255 votes. This is a riding where he walked away with it in a by-election back in October. Clearly an indication of the surge that we're seeing across the province tonight. Let's tell the tale of two ridings here, and this is Rachel Notley's riding of Edmonton Strathcona. Check that out. Yep, she is elected. No surprise there, but it's still a question mark hanging over Jim Prentice. I wonder at this point whether or not he would be happy to not be elected and have to sit in the legislature, because he would be bound, you would think, by honor, at least, to serve out his term. He asked those folks for their vote. But yeah, he'd be sitting with just 10 others in the PC caucus. Again, he has presided over the demise of the dynasty. Jim Prentice came in just 6 months ago. He was supposed to be the solution to the problem. It sounds like the problem was bigger than him. That desire for change that we saw even as far back as 2012, when Alison Redford was trailing in the polls, when the electorate rushed back into the arms of the PCs for fear of what the Wild Rose might represent. Well, it was triggered. It coalesced around Rachel Notley, and the NDP will form government. Big question now, and it's looking like they will, whether or not they will form a majority government. Where are we going next, folks? John Archer with the latest results. John.
Rob, you may have noticed that those results in Calgary Foothills were tight for Jim Prentice. There are some Tories that are running for re-election tonight where it's not tight at all. In fact, Nicole Goring has been declared elected in Edmonton Castle Downs. Thomas Lukaszuk, longtime MLA in that riding, he loses tonight. Nicole Goring is the new MLA for Edmonton Castle Downs. Edmonton Centre, David Shepherd for the NDP, out to a healthy lead over Laurie Blakeman with the Alberta Liberals. She has been an MLA in this riding for a very long time. But tonight, it looks like David Shepherd is going to the legislature as the MLA for Edmonton Centre. Not declared yet, though. In Edmonton Whitemud, Bob Turner with a healthy lead over Stephen Mandel, the health minister. This is a rematch of that by-election last fall after Stephen Mandel was appointed as the health minister. Then he had to get a seat in the legislature. He won that by-election over Bob Turner. Bob Turner said at that time, I'm going to be back whenever there's the next provincial election. Well, here he is tonight, and it looks like he is going to be headed to the legislature, but that is too early to call as well. Calgary Greenway, this is a surprise. Don Munro with the NDP with a lead over Manmeet Buller, who is a cabinet minister for Jim Prentice. This is supposed to be a safe, if not one of the safest seats for the Tories in Calgary. Don Munro really giving Manmeet Buller a run for his money. Only 20 of 75 polls reporting so far, though. In Drayton Valley, Devon, Mark Smith for the Wild Rose Party has a lead over Diana McQueen. She is a cabinet minister under Jim Prentice. She held a cabinet position in the Alison Redford government as well. Mark Smith with the Wild Rose Party out to a healthy lead right now in Drayton Valley, Devon. In West Yellowhead, Eric Rosendahl with the NDP has a 47-vote lead over Stuart Taylor. Robin Campbell, the finance minister, is in third place in West Yellowhead. Eric Rosendahl, he works at West Fraser Pulp Mill. He is a union leader in that town. He looks like that could be a tight race tonight. We're going to watch that closely for sure. In Wetaskiwin Camrose, Bruce Hinckley for the NDP with a lead of just 5 votes over Verlin Olson. Verlin Olson, a cabinet minister under Alison Redford and Jim Prentice, assumed the justice minister portfolio just a week ago. Bruce Hinckley, that is going to be a close race tonight in that riding. In Fort McMurray, Conklin, Brian Jean, the leader of the Wild Rose Party, out to a lead over Ariana Mancini for the NDP. Brian Jean, this is the first time running provincially. He, of course, was in Stephen Harper's caucus along with Jim Prentice in Ottawa. He resigned as an MP a few years ago. He's back, and he's running for his first provincial seat. Brian Jean up in Fort McMurray, Conklin. In Athabasca, Sturgeon Redwater, Colin Paquette has a healthy lead over Jeff Johnson right now. Jeff Johnson is a cabinet minister under Jim Prentice, also was a cabinet minister under Alison Redford. But Colin Paquette trying to do what his father did because his father was an MLA for the NDP back in the 80s. Rob?
John, wow. Yeah. It's just those familiar names, those familiar faces, cabinet ministers, the power of incumbency. It means nothing tonight in Alberta. It is an orange wave. It is going to be an NDP government. It appears to be shaping up to be a Wild Rose opposition. Who would have thought that just a few months ago when the opposition was virtually wiped off the map? Christina Barnes back. And a picture, well, it tells 1,000
It does
words,
say
right?
it all. This is Daniel and how he is reacting to the news of the NDP win tonight. He doesn't say who he was supporting, so I think no matter what, that kind of an expression is on many people's faces in our province tonight and across the country. Now, a few parties heating up, and I didn't know that people Yeah, there's the Notley crew, the Rachel Notley supporters. I didn't know that drinking parties started during elections, but apparently tonight there's a lot of them. This one in Fort McMurray, and of course, this pretty much says it all. There is the NDP orange wave that is now sweeping Alberta.
My favorite NDP shirt up until the Notley crew was Raj Panu, Raj Against the Machine, a fist. I still have it in the old archives here. I'm an unbiased journalist. I covered the legislature a lifetime ago. I just liked it. It was such a great momentum. And look who we have with Marion Warnica tonight, the former leader of the New Democratic Party here in Alberta, and all the waving signs of orange in behind you. Raj Panu, would he have ever envisioned this unfolding, Marion? If you could ask him that out of the gate, I would be fascinated to hear the answer.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. Did you ever imagine a result like this tonight, sir? Did you imagine a result like this tonight?
No,
Tell the people at home.
No, it's beyond my expectations, frankly. But it's Rachel's leadership and her call on Albertans to make history and Albertans have said yes, a resounding yes. This is indeed a historic evening.
What do you think? Lots of people have described the campaign as a strong campaign, as a nearly flawless campaign. Yet, there was a huge mistake in the platform from an economic perspective, $1 billion mistake on when the budget would be balanced. Yet, it's described as a strong campaign. What went right?
You know, it's an accumulation of anger among Albertans, rage against the Tory machine. That's what it was. It's been accumulating over years. I could sense it as a leader when I was going around. And that's been growing. And what happened over the last 5 years, 4 different premiers in 5 years. And Tories are talking about stability.
Absolutely, and a message of hope from the NDP throughout the campaign, and certainly that's the message that we're getting from supporters here tonight. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Marion. Yes, from 4th to 1st in just a matter of 28 days. That kind of accomplishment in any campaign is huge, but it's the NDP here in the most conservative province in the country. Rachel Notley and the NDP breaking through big time tonight. The CBC Decision Desk is ready to make another major call. Rachel Notley has a majority government. The next government here in Alberta will be a majority NDP government. Gone is the PC era. After almost 44 years, the PC's almost wiped off the map, almost down to single digits after what we'd seen in last year, 2014, Alison Redford. A lot of people wrote them off then. And then it appeared that they were launching a comeback under a new leader, riding in on a white horse. Well, it's the orange wave that is taking Alberta tonight, taking it and holding on to it for at least 4 years. Rachel Notley and a majority government. Raj Panu, he was almost beside himself there. Marion Warnica reminded me of the NHL Stanley Cup playoff commercials where they ask, what's it like? And he can't form the words. A lot of people with a lot of words, and they're chanting there tonight.
Absolutely. One of the main slogans for the NDP's campaign was a time for change. And we have heard from the voters in Alberta tonight. This is going to be a huge change, but it is a history-making turn, one that these people were hoping for, but certainly not expecting. They are pinching themselves time and again. The people in this room say they are stunned. There's a feeling of disbelief among all this celebration here. Reality will set in eventually, probably tomorrow. Tonight, it's all about the celebration.
And now for those candidates, it's going to be, hey, where might I land? Am I cabinet material? Thank you, Marion. And John has a bit of a picture shaping up around that. A lot of those folks coming from Edmonton. But, you know, there could be a bit of a concern here. I mean, there is a breakthrough in other parts of the province for sure, in Calgary as well. But you don't want to represent just one city in this province. You always want to spread that around. So, yes, there's some breakthroughs in Edmonton and some folks on the board by wide margins here. And the jockeying begins immediately, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But Rachel Notley's going to have her hands full picking a cabinet.
She is. I mean, this is a huge caucus, obviously, and she does have to start thinking about forming a cabinet based on the members that have been elected for the NDP tonight. And in some other races, Edmonton-McClung, we've declared Lorne Dack elected as the NDP MLA for this riding in West Edmonton. He beats David Zhao tonight. David Zhao, a little bit of a controversial politician when it came to expense claims and claiming for mileage when he lives in Edmonton and drives to work. And that was controversial. David Zhao has not been re-elected tonight. In Edmonton Riverview, Laurie Sigurdsson for the NDP. She wins this riding over Steve Young, who is running for re-election there for the Tories, a former city police officer in Edmonton. Steve Young has gone down to defeat tonight. Laurie Sigurdsson will represent Edmonton Riverview at the legislature. Some more results that we have coming in. Richard Feehan has been declared elected in Edmonton Rutherford. Chris Labossiere was a star candidate, promoted candidate in Edmonton, but Richard Feehan takes that riding. He is going to the legislature as the MLA for Edmonton Rutherford. Also, Edmonton Meadowlark, John Carson for the NDP. He is going to the legislature, and he beats Catherine O'Neill for the Tories. John Carson, maybe not expecting to be an MLA when he got into this race.
Yes.
He's going to be an MLA.
How old is he? Do you remember?
He's in his 20s.
Yeah, they all look young. Maybe we're just getting old.
He graduated from broadcasting in 2012. He's an electrician right now, but now he is a new politician.
Smart enough to get out of broadcasting. I don't know about going to politics, but thanks very much, John. All right, so we're looking at an NDP majority government here in Alberta. And, you know, a lot of people think that maybe this could be a harbinger of things to come for a federal vote coming up in the fall. Certainly the federal party, the branch of the party, would certainly like to believe that it's a sign of good things to come. And I can see the leader of the federal party tweeting about it already.
That's right. Federal NDP leader Tom Mulcair giving his congratulations to Rachel Notley tonight. Congratulations on your historic victory, Rachel Notley, inspired by the hopeful, optimistic campaign you ran. Now, Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi has been very vocal through this campaign. First, upset the election was called, and then right before the election, saying he maybe expected a PC victory. Now tonight, saying I think it's safe to say congratulations to Premier-elect Rachel Notley and her team. What an election! Yes,
he had taken aim at Jim Prentice time and again. I asked him
frustrated about the spending.
He really was. It was interesting. Some of the sharpest rebukes at the beginning of the campaign came from Naheed Nenshi.
Now I know you were waiting for this one. Danielle Smith tweeting tonight, the NDP surge would have happened regardless of anything I did, folks. This is why I said Conservatives needed to reunite. I wasn't joking.
Yeah, she said that in this room in an extended interview with us. You know, a lot of people will be shaking their heads at that tonight and saying that she may have authored what happened tonight. That could be a defensive position, but nevertheless, it's Danielle Smith's take, and wow. Danielle Smith has got to be thinking, all right, so I grew the vote, thank you, Christina, to 17 seats. The Wild Rose, which I walked away from, turned my back on for various reasons, ran into the bosom of the PCs, hoping perhaps for a position in cabinet, now appears to be in position to form the official opposition. All right. So everything's tilted on its head here tonight. I haven't seen any updates recently on Fort McMurray Conklin. Brian Labby, you would know the story there better than I. I would assume that the leader is leading given the results that we're seeing around the province. They're feeling pretty good about Brian Jean representing his party in the legislature.
Yeah, there's no question about that, Rob. He does have the early lead here in Fort McMurray. That is obviously a bright spot for the party. And Vitor Marciano, you've been with the party for 5 years. First question, reaction to an NDP majority?
Well, we knew all along that Albertans were going to vote for change. The question whether it was going to be Wild Rose change or NDP change. And folks weren't listening to us for a while. We kind of made it clear that change was coming. And we got change today. Rachel's won, and I'm going to congratulate her on that. And we're going to work really hard to be a strong, effective, principled opposition. It's going to be an interesting 4 years.
What does this mean for the future of Alberta?
I think for Alberta, it means that they're going to have a very clear difference between the opposition party and the government. They're going to get to see two different visions of where things could go. And 4 years from now, that's going to make for one heck of an interesting election.
How do you interpret the results that we're seeing here for Wild Rose? I mean, you guys moved the needle a little bit, but clearly not enough.
We ran a skeleton campaign. You have to understand, Brian Jean has been leader of this party for 37 days. 37 days ago, he'd never done any leader's job. He's taken the party from sort of the bottom, and in 37 days, we're back to official opposition status. We've got more seats than we had before. We did all of this on a shoestring budget, $1 million campaign. When people actually come and see the results in a few months' time, when the details come out, they'll discover that we probably ran on a third the budget of the other parties or less. We did very, very well. We're pleased. It's a tribute to Brian's hard work. It's a tribute to all of those Wild Rose supporters across the province. It's a good night.
A victory for the Wild Rose Party.
You know, let's put it this way. I still think the night can get better for us, but it's certainly not a defeat for the Wild Rose Party.
Vitor Marciano, thank you very much. Rob?
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, a big part of the story, this total unknown that came out of the woodwork of federal politics. He was certainly known in Fort McMurray, but not to the province and the people of Alberta at large. And he led his party back to certainly respectability for sure, considering so many had written him off. We talked about the race up in Fort McMurray, Conklin. Look at, what was he, Advanced Education Minister John Archer, Don Scott, placed in third right now. The NDP ahead of Don Scott, and it looks like Brian Jean could be heading towards securing that riding tonight. He certainly hopes to be sitting in the legislature. All right, so a huge part of the story here, not only Brian Jean, and I just want to note that in the middle of the leadership campaign, near the end of it, Brian Jean went through something extraordinary that no parent should ever have to go through. I don't want to be a downer, but he lost his son. Lost his son in hospital. He was fighting a rare form of cancer, right? Took a couple of days off campaigning and then came back and refocused. A lot of people knocked him for being robotic, they said, in the leaders debate, but it would take something just to get off the mat. You're a father, and to get back on the campaign trail. So kudos for him for participating at all. Okay, back to the story that is unfolding, and a lot of this now, with hearing from Danielle Smith, Brian Jean is going to focus on the events of December, those floor crossers. Not a lot of them decided to run.
That's right.
Some of them didn't win the nominations.
Some lessons to be learned anywhere in Canada about crossing the floor, particularly mass floor crossings, even though we only saw that in Alberta. In Chestermere Rockview, Bruce McAllister for the Tories. He was elected in 2012 as a Wild Rose MLA. He has a tight race right now with Leila Ahir of the Wild Rose Party. Bruce McAllister trying to hang on in Chestermere Rockview. Also in Medicine Hat, Bob Warner with the NDP has a lead over Val Olson. Blake Peterson was elected as a Wild Rose member in 2012, crossed the floor in December. Looks like he's paying the price for that tonight. Bob Warner, not elected yet, but we're going to keep a close eye on those numbers. In Calgary Shaw, Graham Suka has a lead over Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson elected as a Wild Rose member, crossed the floor in December. This is a tight race. Graham Suka leading by just over 200 votes over Jeff Wilson in Calgary Shaw, one of the southern Calgary ridings that people are watching tonight. In Innisfail Sylvan Lake, Don McIntyre with the Wild Rose Party has a lead over Carrie Toll. Carrie Toll was one of the first floor crossers because she actually crossed in November with Ian Donovan, another member that we're going to talk about soon. She is trailing to Don McIntyre with the Wild Rose Party by more than 1,600 votes. Doesn't look like it's going to work out for Carrie Toll tonight. And here we go down to Little Bow. David Schneider with the Wild Rose Party has a slim lead over Ian Donovan right now. Ian Donovan crossed the floor with Carrie Toll, and right now still too close to call in Little Bow. And so, Rob, lessons to be learned about crossing the floor. I think we're always going to have politicians that do cross the floor, but we certainly aren't going to have mass floor crossings like that, because I think that's where the lessons are going to be learned.
Yeah, a chapter for sure. Maybe a chapter in Danielle Smith's book we want to read that she's currently working on, apparently. Thank you, John. Not in a position yet. We're not calling the official opposition yet for the Wild Rose, but it's certainly looking that way. Okay, so let me just get this straight. We have a party forming a majority government in Alberta that wants to raise corporate taxes, raise personal income taxes even more than the guys that they just booted out. You have a party that won't raise taxes at all, sitting in second, ahead of the party that tried to devour it. Can you start to make sense of this for me?
Well, it's going to take a while for the implications to sink in. You know, think about it nationally. This turns Canadian politics completely
It really
on
does.
its head.
Tom Mulcair tweeting about it.
But I'm reminded of 1990, Ontario, Bob Rae. I was flying into Toronto from Calgary, and I was in business class at the time, and the pilot came on and said, Bob Rae has been elected, and there was a great cheer that went up from the back of the plane.
Not in business class?
No, the people in business class were looking around going, wow,
So
where are we landing?
Downtown Calgary tonight.
I think there's going to be a lot of shock. But back to the policies, I mean, I think their policies were quite middle of the road.
Centric.
I mean, 2 out of 3 pipelines they support.
Yep.
More processing for oil and gas resources
in the province. A lot of Albertans are in
Things
favor of
that
Corporate
Albertans
tax
support.
increases. Yeah, they wanted to see that too.
Yes, but in 2008, Albertans also supported a royalty review.
Yeah.
And, you know, quite often what it is that people say they want, they don't necessarily understand the implications of.
Whoa.
And no, and listen, they're entitled to vote for that. But I do think that tomorrow we are going to see some capital fleeing. We're going to see some business decisions being made
really
that are going to cause some.
No, listen, this is the second election in a row Albertans have decided I'm going to go with the most left-wing of the major options. This is not a particularly shocking thing when you look at all of the polls and all how it rolled out. We're shocked because it's never happened before. It's kind of like when you move out of home for the first time. There's that trepidation. You're not really sure where it's going to go. That trepidation should be gone. All of the facts pointed to this. Alberta, you've called it Canada's most conservative province a few times. I'm not sure the facts are backing that up anymore. We have an NDP government. There's very few provinces where we have an NDP
certainly
government.
When you look at the municipal level, Alberta has always been, quite progressive in Calgary and Edmonton.
Nobody would have seen this guy coming. A Muslim mayor in Canada's conservative heartland, if you'll give me that,
and
Corey.
prior to that,
certainly the stereotype, right?
And prior to that, Dave Brown-Kanye won after running for the federal Liberals.
Yeah, Liberal. Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, but anyway, I think that we're into completely uncharted territory. Right?
Well, everyone's represented across the spectrum in some way, currently elected and leading. We've got them all on the board right now, and we do want to make it official. The official call coming from the CBC decision desk now. What I was indicating is that the call that we're expecting to make any moment now is that the Wild Rose is trending towards forming the official opposition. Currently, let's look at the share of the popular vote, and obviously the NDP dominating that. They're not, interestingly, getting to the threshold of 43%. Historically, no party in this province has formed a majority government without 43% of the popular vote, but this is not like any other campaign in recent memory, for sure. This is a three-way race, to be sure. The NDP spreading its vote share across the province in places it needed to form government. The story told through the seat change board here. Look at the increase. They went from 4 seats to a projected 54, picking up 50 seats along the way. That is an extraordinary turn of events. Look how many the PCs lost overnight. In the blink of an eye, that dynasty dead for now. John Archer, the latest results.
Rob, we've got some more results that we want to share with you now. And first, we're going to go to the riding of Edmonton-Decore, where Chris Nielsen has been declared elected for the NDP. This is obviously a pickup. Janice Sarich was running for re-election tonight for the Tories, but Chris Nielsen is heading to the legislature as the MLA for Edmonton-Decore. And some other results that we have coming in. These are elected NDP MLAs that we're showing you right now. In Edmonton-Ellerslie, Rod Loyola is going to the legislature. He wanted to be the leader. He ran against Rachel Notley and David Egan for the leadership of the NDP. Rod Loyola, he's now the MLA for Edmonton-Ellerslie. Also in Edmonton-Glenora, Sarah Hoffman, former chair of the Edmonton Public School Board. She was taking on Heather Klimchuk, a cabinet minister under Alison Redford and under Jim Prentice. Sarah Hoffman just won by more than 4,000 votes, out by 4,000 votes right now. Sarah Hoffman is winning in Edmonton Glenora. And in Edmonton Gold Bar, Marlon Schmidt has been declared elected in Edmonton Gold Bar. David Dorward, cabinet minister under Jim Prentice, trying to get back to the legislature, but Marlon Schmidt has been declared elected for the riding of Edmonton Gold Bar. Also declared elected is Annie McKittrick in Sherwood Park for the NDP. This is a real pickup, and a pickup that not very many people expected, because the race was supposed to be between Kathy Olson and Linda Osenchuk. Kathy Olson trying to get re-elected as a Tory MLA. Linda Osenchuk trying to take it for the Wild Rose Party. Didn't happen, as the NDP now have an MLA in Sherwood Park. Lethbridge West, Shannon Phillips, former caucus worker for the NDP about 10 years ago at the legislature, moved down to Lethbridge. She is going back to the legislature as the MLA for Lethbridge West. She has been declared elected, taking out Greg Weddick tonight in that riding. Calgary-Klein, Craig Coulahan has been declared elected. Kyle Fawcett, a cabinet minister under Jim Prentice, he was trying to get re-elected tonight. Coulahan takes Calgary-Klein from Kyle Fawcett. That is a big pickup for the NDP. It shows how they have pushed into Calgary. Calgary-Curry, another piece of evidence that they've showed that they have pushed forward into Calgary. Brian Malkinson for the NDP declared elected. Christine Cusinelli, a one-time cabinet minister under Alison Redford, got into some trouble with some expense claims, was punted out of cabinet. Eventually, she was trying to get re-elected tonight. Calgary-Curry goes to the NDP, and Rob, there are a number of Calgary ridings that I would venture 2 weeks ago nobody had in play for the NDP.
Our Kim Ternacity was in Cusinelli's office interviewing her 2 days ago. She said you could hear a pin drop. Not a volunteer in sight. She was over in Calgary Fort candidate Joe Cece's office. She said she could barely hear herself think. A lot of people going in and out of that office. Corey, I want to get back to you. Corey Hogan, for those who missed the top of our show, is the former executive director of the Alberta Liberal Party. And in that capacity, once upon a time, you were trying to throw the long bomb, Hail Mary pass on the progressive side of the spectrum, saying, why don't we get together and essentially unite the center-left vote? Did you not author a memo proposing a merger between your party and the NDP?
Yeah, I did. I don't feel like it was a bad memo when I look at the results tonight. I think it's pretty clear that the NDP had something going. And when we think about where the Liberals were and where the Liberals are, I don't take a lot of joy in saying this, but the provincial Liberal Party has been dead for years. This is just the election we find the body. And I think there was probably time to do something that could have saved the Liberal movement to a certain extent, but that it looks like Albertans have chosen their progressive alternative.
Do you think it'll stay that way? Do you think that center-left vote will continue to fall into the NDP's lap? Are we looking at the death of the Liberals?
It looks like that tonight. I mean, I think what we got to talk about right now is what's going to be happening with Greg Clark and the Alberta Party on the board. Can they make something happen? Are these PCs all going to be needing to look for a new home? Are the PCs going to exist?
Yes.
Come the summer. These are questions I think we've got to ask ourselves.
And Susan, you aren't ready to cede that territory. We went over that earlier. You expect the PCs will be around, but let me ask you what I asked Kim earlier, and we're all waiting for word on Jim Prentice's arrival and that concession speech. Do you expect that he'll be announcing that he will no longer be the leader?
I don't know that I can speculate on that.
What would you counsel him to do?
Well, I don't think he came back in order to lead a caucus of a dozen people. He's really a very capable guy. The campaign that was run by the PCs, I think, had an awful lot of errors, starting with running an election on a bad news budget and calling an election earlier than most people felt that it was necessary to do. And I think they had a number of errors during the campaign itself as well. And some of those fall to Mr. Prentice, some of them fall to the people that he chose to have around him, and that's unfortunate. But it would surprise me a little bit if he wanted to stay and lead.
Was it hubris going in from Prentice? He was walking on water?
This will go down as one of the biggest political miscalculations in Canadian political history. Up there with David Peterson.
He didn't have to pull the trigger on that.
He didn't have to go early, and so I think that there'll be a lot of people questioning that. But this isn't the first time that Jim Prentice got defeated by the NDP. Just a little bit of history.
In the 80s.
In Mountain View, Bob Hawksworth defeated Jim Prentice in 1986.
Jim Prentice doesn't like talking about that. He was also defeated in his run for the leadership of the federal Progressive Conservative Party. We won't get into the details there, but he's seen this territory before, and that's the life of the politician.
Well, it's a difficult situation. They've obviously been decimated here tonight.
Okay, you three, we'll talk to you a little bit more as the night carries on. Lots to talk about. Ian Hannah-Mansing spending some time in our city tonight. The last crowd you were with, Ian, they were kind of grim. One of the fellas in a suit had his arms crossed like this, shaking his head. The other kind of laughing nervously. And you look like you got a different crowd there tonight. Some happy folks.
Although a lot of that reaction, though, I have to tell you, is because it's cold out here right now.
Oh, cold for the West Coaster. This is spring in Alberta, Ian. It's beautiful out there right now.
Yeah, I noticed you say that from inside. But anyway, we have Amanda and Alice here. Amanda, you saw the numbers. You were in our truck looking at the election special. Your reaction?
I'm not surprised that NDP is winning, but it's definitely higher than I thought it was going to be in Alberta, for sure.
And you voted today, and you told me that you voted Liberal. Why is that?
I did. It went down to social issues. A lot of them had a lot of similarities in terms of money and economics, and it went down to social issues. And NDP and Liberal do have very similar social issues, so I'm not upset about it.
Alice, were you surprised at the final numbers there? Huge victory for the NDP.
Yeah, very much so. I thought the best that I could hope for was a minority government, just to switch it up so that we don't have the same conservative reign that has been going on, which is unique in the world.
Yeah. So I read into that you voted NDP.
I did.
And is this
actually a mistake because David Swan runs in my riding, and I actually really appreciate Dr. Swan. But yes, I did vote NDP.
And that's this riding here that he was running in?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Of all the people in the province to talk to, we talked to two people one who voted Liberal, the other who kind of wishes they voted Liberal. How do you feel about being in a province now with an NDP majority government?
Totally thrilled. So happy I can't even really tell you, actually.
Yeah, there's going to be some good changes, hopefully, coming down the pike. As long as they stick to what they said that they were going to do, there's going to be some good changes. And I'm really excited about it, actually.
And I think people are terrified that they're going to run oil into the ground, but this is not the case. It's nowhere near as socialist per se,
exactly,
as it is in other provinces. So
I think they know that Alberta is an oil oil province, and I know they're not going to run into the ground.
We have to recognize the need to invest in alternative resources, though, so that's huge.
Well, thanks to both of you for braving the cold, for talking to us live here on CBC. Nice meeting you as well. And Rob, once again, no matter who people support, we get that, we talked about it at the beginning of the election special, people excited about politics and either excited or certainly, willing to see what will happen now with this new government in Alberta. Back to you.
Yeah, leaned liberal, but are totally thrilled, to quote them, with the events that are unfolding tonight. Thank you, Ian. Go bundle up. We'll get through this night together, I promise. All right, so from here down in Calgary with Ian Hannah-Mansing to where the story is really unfolding up in Edmonton, NDP HQ. And Marion Warnica, you have a candidate who I believe we've declared elected tonight.
That's right. This is David Shepherd. He was the candidate for Edmonton Centre. Congratulations. What was going through your mind when you realized you'd done it, you'd won?
To be honest, I was a bit stunned. I was thrilled. It's great to see. We ran the best campaign we knew. I had some great staff. I was just really excited to see the result and see it come out. I'm just so thankful to the people of Edmonton Centre for choosing me to represent them.
Now, you were telling me a little earlier that this is the first time you've ever run for office. Can you tell me, what about the NDP inspired you to get involved?
Pardon?
You told me this was the first time you'd run for any government position. Yeah. What was it about this party that inspired you to get involved, to put your name in?
The NDP, I ran for the NDP because they're the party that represents my values. I honestly believe that they're best positioned to offer Albertans what they're looking for. Albertans have made it clear that they reject the politics of fear. They're looking for honesty and integrity in their government. And I saw in the NDP caucus, as it stood at that time, people that were working hard for the best interests of Albertans, and I wanted to be part of that team.
But tonight has exceeded your expectations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I don't think anybody could have seen this. Certainly 6 months ago when I first went and approached the party to talk about volunteering, nobody could have seen this result, So coming into the election, again, we just wanted to run a good campaign, go as hard as we could, and see what the people of Alberta had to say.
Thank you very much, David Shepherd, our new NDP seat for Edmonton Centre. And a lot of young volunteers on his campaign that David says helped him get him where he is today.
And Marion, as I understand it, after that leadership debate, those young volunteers started coming in droves. So did the money, and they likely made the difference in getting that vote out in some key ridings for sure. Thank you, Marion Warnica. All right, I want to bring in Calgary political strategist Stephen Carter, who's been patiently standing by in Ottawa. Stephen Carter, for those unfamiliar, along with Susan Elliott, pulled it out of the fire for the PCs and Alison Redford back in 2012 when everybody believed that the dynasty was coming to an end then. And if I'm quoting you correctly, Stephen, you said you and Susan, you didn't want to be standing watch on the demise of the PCs. You didn't want to wear that on your CV. It's happened tonight. Why do you think it's happened?
Well, I think over the last decade, people are, first of all, they're going to think that it just happened tonight. It didn't just happen tonight. Albertans have been reluctantly voting PC since 2004. We put in Ralph Klein again because it was his last time. We then voted for Ed Stelmach because we really didn't like Kevin Taft at all. Only 41% of Albertans voted in that election. In 2012, the number went up to 54% of people voting, but they voted for Alison Redford not because they were particularly enamored with the PC party at that point, but because they were afraid of the Wild Rose. And now here we are after a decade of elections, over a decade of elections where we didn't want to elect the PCs. Finally, everything has turned and we have elected an NDP government.
Why do you think they've coalesced around Rachel Notley?
Well, I think it was. I think that Jim Prentice, in fact, chose Rachel Notley to be his successor in the debate. When Jim Prentice stopped talking about Brian Jean and started ignoring him, I think that Albertans took that as a cue that Brian Jean was not ready to govern. And instead, Jim Prentice went after Rachel Notley. Rachel Notley held her own. She did a great job in that debate. And I think Albertans said, you know what? That's someone I can park my angry vote behind. I'll learn more about her later.
You're a former chief of staff to Alison Redford, to a premier. You've got a new premier coming in. She came in, to this campaign with 4 seats. Not a lot of political experience beyond that 4 seats. Some experience for sure, and the likes of Brian Mason has been around the legislature for some time. And Rachel Notley certainly has the pedigree going back to her father. What would you be advising her in the days ahead in terms of choosing cabinet and moving forward with an aggressive agenda, or are you dipping your toe in the water and taking your time?
Well, because the NDP is going to be branded with an extreme label right off the bat, I'd go slow. I'd go as slow as possible, and then I would be trying to move the pieces around. So I wouldn't even ask to be sworn in as the Premier for at least 2 weeks until I could figure out things and move things slowly along. There is no rush. She's won a majority government. She doesn't have to fight an election like Alison Redford did within 6 months. Jim Prentice could have gone slow. Jim Prentice could have brought us along with him and brought us onto his vision. He didn't. He moved quickly, and the end game for him is that he's no longer the Premier. Rachel Notley needs to take that lesson, understand it, and move incredibly slow. She needs to build relationships with the oil and gas industry. The people I'm getting texts from tonight are scared. They're nervous about what the NDP is going to be, and they want to know if the NDP is going to be an oil and gas friendly government or if it's going to be a government that's going to make it harder at a very difficult time to be an oil and gas company in the province of Alberta.
Are you expecting, as your former colleague and friend, I'm assuming, Susan Elliott still, was telling us earlier, that some of that capital will be fleeing from Alberta in the weeks ahead?
Well, Susan's being a little bit disingenuous. The capital's not here anymore. In the last 3 months, there's been no new capital flowing into the province of Alberta to produce new mines, to open up our oil sands anymore. We had that happen in the last 7 years, and that was 7 years that we weren't able to produce a surplus on our provincial budgets. So what we have to imagine is what's going to happen to the NDP is they're going to inherit a very difficult economy, and whatever happens from this day forward, they're going to own. They're going to be blamed for it.
Stephen Carter with a view from Ottawa. Calgarian and Ottawa returning to a province painted orange in a couple of days, I expect. Thank you, Stephen, for taking the time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so all eyes now on downtown Calgary. All eyes on PC headquarters. Certainly not a party atmosphere down there. Kim Trinacity standing by. And I'm assuming, Kim, everyone is waiting for Jim Prentice to arrive, and things are looking pretty grim.
Absolutely, Rob. And most of the people here are the media. I think we outnumber the spectators by about 3 to 1. So we're expecting Jim Prentice to come any moment now. We don't know for sure if he's going to come from right behind me, which would be the most direct route from across the street to the Westin Hotel, through the audience, which is really sparse, up to the podium. But he might choose to come through a different route so he doesn't sort of suffer that indignity of walking through an empty room. There aren't very many people he'll be talking to in the room itself, but of course all of Alberta will be wanting to hear from him as to what he has to say, what his future is, and what happened. So a lot of people around the province, of course, want to hear from Jim Prentice, but he should be arriving any moment now.
All right, thank you, Kim. We'll cut to it as soon as we do see a sign of Jim Prentice. In terms of what he's going to be hearing from people around the province, yeah, he's going to be hearing it from every corner. Let's take a look at this graphic here. It shows where the PCs lost vote tonight, and there is not a region in this province where they didn't lose vote tonight. And look at that, Fortress Calgary down 14 points. Edmonton, of course, that was expected, the capital region. Northern Alberta, that was a key battleground. Everyone talks about the 3 battlegrounds, the 2 cities in rural Alberta. You can really divide that up into perhaps even 3 sections, southern, northern, and central. They lost a lot in northern Alberta where they needed to hold some key ridings. Think of the ministers that John was going over before a few minutes ago, and some of those faces going down tonight. So overall, a terrible night for the PCs. And I would think, I mean, we keep going back to this story. Jim Prentice trying to get his bearings. Maybe you don't write this degree of a concession speech, but I would expect, based on our previous elections and someone is coming in third place, so we're going to hear him step down tonight, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. There's no way going from a dynasty to third place that he can stay on. There's just absolutely no way. The question then becomes who leads the PCs and what direction do they go?
Who wants to lead them?
Well, you know, to Susan's point, you know, I think we maybe rushed to judgment quickly by saying the party's over and it's going to be dead. Social Credit lasted one more election after their defeat.
You got that going, Susan.
Now,
you know, one more election.
But that's a long way away. That's 4 years. And so many of the people that know them and that work with them are out of a job now, and I'm not sure where they're going.
There are some key figures that didn't run this time. I think of Doug Griffiths. So he's a former leadership candidate. He wasn't happy with this merger with the Wild Rose. An articulate guy, a young guy, still has passion. Could he rebuild a party like that? Could it galvanize somebody coming out from the woodwork?
Yeah,
Party faithful?
I think we better leave the body a little time to cool before we start the autopsy here. Because I think progressive conservatives are going to want a little bit of time to think about this, to absorb this. I mean, we've got a sense of who the caucus is going to be here. But I do believe that we are still strong on the ground. I think there are a lot of progressive conservatives out there who are not going to be comfortable in any other party. They're going to want to rebuild this party. And it will take us a little bit of time to figure out exactly how we're going to do
Let's
that.
take a look at your cheat sheet there. If you could just go over those names. Again, a sense of who might form this caucus. Let's see how many of these names are familiar.
Yeah, so interestingly, we've picked up 2 Wild Rose seats, I think, depending on sort of, some of these are still going back and forth.
It's fluid.
But we've got Richard Godfried, who would be a pickup from the Wild Rose, Jim Prentice, Rick McIver, a very strong lead in his riding, David Rodney, Sandra Jansen, Rick Fraser, Mike Ellis, very strong lead in Calgary West, Bruce McAllister, that one keeps going back and forth.
Former Wild Roser.
But former, and a floor crosser, but I'm not sure where that one's going to end. I see on the screen it's the word 10. That's one of the ones that's going back and forth. Up north we have Wayne Drysdale and Frank Oberle up in the north west part of the province, and Richard Starkey, the veterinarian from Lloyd.
So some experience at the cabinet table for sure. These aren't neophytes. There could be some people there, some pieces to build around again. What would you expect, Corey?
Well, I mean, I think the problem is that list does have a couple of people who've run for the leadership before, including Griffiths, who you talked about before. I think if the party is going to be saved, if the PCs are going to be saved, it's going to have to be a change from without, more so even than Jim Prentice was. It's going to take a real insurgency.
And where it went wrong, I think right at the beginning, I was told by people in caucus, as well as some NDP people, Bob Hawksworth mentioned this to me, said that Jim Prentice approached the integration of the Wild Rose, the floor crossers, like a merger, like a CEO would do. You get it done, you announce it, and you move ahead, instead of a marriage where you talk with people, you maybe date them for a few weeks, you meet their brother, their sister, their aunt, and then you pop the question.
I think we're finding in a lot of ways we did not go into this election looking to elect a CEO. That's pretty
that's clear. That's very clear.
Well, and in fact, I think one of the errors that the campaign made, Jim Prentice is a very warm, personable, intelligent guy. He spends his weekends fly fishing in the Rocky Mountains, that sort of thing. And yet, the impression that we had of him through this campaign was, in fact, a very corporate image. And I don't think people they didn't get to know Jim Prentice. And in part, I think that's because the election came maybe earlier than it needed to come. But
they sure did get to know Rachel Notley.
They did, exactly.
So
yes.
Susan's right, the body's warm, but this was a bad campaign. I've run and I've been part of a lot of bad campaigns over the years, frankly.
You've been with the Liberals.
Well, yeah.
This
is a bad campaign.
Buck stops at the leader, though, without question. I know you don't want to dance on the body for sure, and it's too premature to do that. We want to hear from Mr. Prentice. But just a quick recap. This is a man who was telling Albertans to look in the mirror. This is a man who painted the context for that for months, saying, you know what, I wasn't a part of the old PC party. That wasn't me. And by in effect, a colleague of mine had pointed out, he set up a context for that look in the mirror. Look in the mirror yourselves, Albertans. I wasn't a part of it. I've been telling you that. It's not me. Look in the mirror. For a lesser degree, symbolism, he went out and bought a vintage car on auction. A lot of people said, you don't want to be doing that at a time when you're telling Albertans to take a bullet. Yes, you're entitled to spend your money the way you want to. And it just kept
we were watching that in Calgary. In Calgary, that was fine. It didn't really hurt him.
Yeah,
outside of Calgary, it did.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They never sold him outside of Calgary. And even in Calgary, it didn't work very well.
Came across as a CEO.
But let me say this. There were a lot of people looking to make a lot of hay out of every little misstep. Rachel Notley makes a $1 billion misstep on the budget, and it's a 2-day story.
Sure, but
Jim Prentice has an off-the-cuff remark, and it's a story for literally a month.
Okay, but when you talk billion-dollar mistakes, the PCs haven't saved a nickel since the 80s. When we talk about oil wealth, I think we diminish the voter when we say this wasn't about issues like that. It's not just about style, it's about substance. We've got a government that led us astray, and Albertans kicked it out tonight.
Well, you got a track record going back 4 decades, Susan, and people are going to point to all sorts of things that they can't point out with the NDP. It's the first time they've ever formed government. Thank you, all of you, and I'm looking forward to more discussion because it's getting good. But in the meantime, I want to get over to John Archer.
One possibility you didn't talk about for Jim Prentice's political future should he lose tonight, or if he lost tonight, that would be a lot easier to fade into the woodwork. That's not happening right now. Jim Prentice has a 1,300 vote lead over Ann Wilson, so it looks like he is still going to be the MLA for Calgary Foothills. That's when the decision comes. Is he going to stay on for a full term? Is this not what he wants? Does he really want to be the leader of a caucus of about 10 people, the third party in the legislature? Looks like Prentice is hanging on in Foothills, though. No surprise here, obviously. Rachel Notley, the next premier of Alberta, winning the riding of Edmonton-Strathcona, a riding that she has held since 2008. Way out in front, a big margin of victory over Shelley Wagner for the Tories. And so Rachel Notley, obviously another commanding victory tonight. Fort McMurray Conklin, Brian Jean has been declared elected. The leader of the Wild Rose Party will be going to the legislature as the leader of the opposition, it looks like at this point anyway. He has beaten Ariana Mancini and Don Scott, a cabinet minister for Alison Redford, a cabinet minister for Jim Prentice. He's in third place tonight. Brian Jean is the MLA for Edmonton Conklin. And in Calgary Mountain View, David Swan, this has not been declared yet. He has an 800 vote lead over Mark Chakinda for the NDP. David Swan was the leader of the Alberta Liberals a few years ago. He actually stepped down without taking the party into an election. And then just a couple of months ago, when Raj Sherman was the leader of the Alberta Liberals, he stepped down. The way that it filtered out was David Swan is the interim leader leading them into this election. Looks like he's going to be the only Liberal that goes to the legislature after tonight's election. And in Calgary Elbow, Greg Clark, the leader of the Alberta Party, has a 1,200 vote lead over Gordon Dirks, the appointed education minister, trying to hang on to this seat for the Tories. This is a rematch of the by-election that was held in the fall. Greg Clark, with a little more than half of the polls reporting, he has a 1,200 vote lead over Gordon Dirks. It would take a substantial turnaround in order to have Gordon Dirks take Calgary Elbow. And we have declared Jim Prentice elected as the MLA for Calgary Foothills. He now holds or maintains his seat in the legislature, but as I mentioned, Rob, might not be a seat that he wants.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what he says about that for sure. John Archer, thank you. He's only held the position as MLA for that riding for a matter of 6 or 7 months or so. All right, let's get to some of the whimsy playing out on social media now with Christina Barnes. Some people piling on a bit, but a lot of people having fun on this historic night here.
One person suggesting Mr. Prentice maybe take over the coach's job for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know, not
the
very
ultimate
nice, right?
dig.
That low blow. Well, other people also taking shots at Prentice and the PCs. Dear PCs, what was it that you were saying about uncertainty in leadership? And this person, anyone think that Prentice wishes he takes back? Oh, made it really big. The math is hard. Comment, after all, he can count to 10 as in 10 PC seats. I believe it is 11 that they are sitting at right now, Rob, but that's not a lot of counting for the PCs tonight.
Jim Prentice is going to be one of those, it looks like, yeah. The Toronto Maple Leafs reference, it's a veiled reference, I think, to either his father or his uncle. It played for the Leafs at least one game or so. Is it his uncle, Bruce? Yeah, his uncle Bruce. So yeah, we saw Jim Prentice in a campaign video in the Flames locker room giving a Go Flames speech, trying to get some of that, what was then Flames momentum into his own election campaign. Didn't seem to work there. The guy who painted himself as a hockey-loving common folk, as we touched on earlier, came across as a CEO who was largely out of touch, and I think we're seeing the results of that tonight. All right, so they are grinning and they are smirking at Wild Rose HQ up in Fort McMurray because, for one, Brian, CBC's decision just officially declared Brian Jean elected.
Absolutely, and we're on the verge of a possible Wild Rose sweep here in Fort McMurray. With me is Tanny Yao, the candidate in Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo. It appears as though he is on his way to knocking off incumbent Mike Allen. Tanny, how are you feeling?
Well, I'm speechless. I'm really humbled by the people of Fort McMurray that they have chosen me to represent. I really want to thank Brian Jean for being an amazing leader, and I really hope that I can do Fort McMurray proud and really.
So it's never easy to knock off an incumbent. What did people tell you on the doorstep? Why was there that eagerness for change?
I think people are just frustrated with the government that's been in for 44 years. They become stagnant, for lack of a better term, and sometimes we just need change.
Did you see this coming, the results that we're seeing tonight? The Tories reduced to maybe a dozen seats, less maybe?
Honestly, I had no idea what to expect. The electorate was all over the place. But, you know, I was confident that we would have a good chance to win here, just based on people I've talked to.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Tanny Yao, candidates leading in Fort McMurray with Buffalo. Rob?
All right, thank you, Brian. I love those honest answers. Honestly, I had no idea what to expect. All of us more or less saying that going into this election day, voting day. Let's drill down a little bit on that Wild Rose candidate's riding here, and we haven't declared him elected yet, but he is out in front, and look who's in third place.
Yeah, Tanny Yao taking on Mike Allen tonight in Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. He hasn't been declared elected, as you mentioned, Rob. About 700 vote lead right now over Stephen Drover for the NDP. Mike Allen in third place. It's going to take a lot to come back from that, with only 15 polls left to come in Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. In Calgary, Buffalo, Kathleen Ganley for the NDP has a 700 vote lead over Terry Rock with the Tories. David Kahn for the Liberals was expected to be competitive in this race. It's a little bit of a three-way race, but right now it looks like it's between Kathleen Ganley for the NDP and Terry Rock for the PCs in Calgary, Buffalo. In Calgary Cross, Ricardo Miranda has a 171 vote lead over Rick Hansen right now, the former police chief in Calgary. Popular police chief. He all of a sudden said that he was retiring. Lots of speculation about, well, was he going to be running in the next election? Yes, he was, and he was appointed to run in Calgary Cross. Ricardo Miranda, though, is giving him a run for his money tonight for the NDP. Calgary Northern Hills, Jamie Kleinstuber has a 1,100 vote lead over Teresa Wu Pa in Calgary Northern Hills. Teresa Wu Pa trying to get re-elected tonight, but she's going to have some ground to make up with 71 of 107 polls reporting in Calgary Northern Hills right now. So, Rob, there are still some races to watch as the numbers continue to come in. Some of them just aren't settled yet.
I know you're keeping your eye on them for us, John. Thank you. You're doing a fantastic job. I just want to remind you watching at home that our CBC Online crew is hard at work here, and part of what they're doing is they're facilitating a live chat, which you can take part in. And, you know, given the events of tonight, the historic events at NDP majority government in Alberta, we do want to hear from you. And if you have something pithy to say, well, Christina Barnes will be taking a look at that, and maybe it'll show up in the big monitor and we can share it with the nation as we are broadcasting live across the nation tonight. So do log on, converse. We're listening to you, just like Marion Warnick up in Edmonton is listening to a lot of cheers tonight. And it looks like, Marion, you have two members of the Notley crew with you.
That's right, and they're well dressed for it. Why don't you introduce yourselves?
My name is Chris Adamson.
I'm Jesse Hahn.
You're outfitted in full Notley crew regalia, these bright orange suits, but you're not necessarily involved directly with the campaign. Why did you want to be down here tonight?
Sorry?
You're in full regalia, you're in these suits, but you're not necessarily volunteering for the campaign. You just wanted to be here. Why is that?
Well, this gentleman here, I believe, is a volunteer. Me, on the other hand, I'm just a concerned citizen who's a big fan of democracy. That's proud that I can finally stand behind my government.
And yourself, you joined one of the campaigns to help out. What was it that drew you to this party this time around?
Well, I think the obvious answer is that it's time for a change. We haven't seen a lot of responsibility in the past. It seems that primarily the former government wasn't really looking at the resources for everyone. So I just wanted to back a party that was going to support people, all through the province. Yeah.
Obviously, too, what we're facing tonight, not only a big change in Alberta, but a big party. Walk me through these outfits. Show me what you're wearing tonight.
Well,
got the famous T-shirt. Why don't you show the people at home here?
Oh, the Notley crew. Yeah, these are great. I had to borrow this shirt last minute just because it fit. I bought it from another big fan.
And where'd you find the suits, or did you dye them?
Well, I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur the last few years. I'm in the clean tech industry, but at a time I was in Vegas, I came across these great suits.
And they came in handy tonight.
Started importing them, came in handy tonight.
You're dressed the part for this party tonight. Back to you, Rob.
Yeah, looking good in that wave of orange up there for sure, Marion. Thank you very much. It all did start in Edmonton. span the province, though. It wasn't just an Edmonton sweep. They picked up seats everywhere they needed to. I just want to give you a quick update of what things are, how things are unfolding at the other party headquarters. This is a live shot of our PC party headquarters camera. You can see Kim Tenacity on the left-hand side of the frame, and you can see that everyone is still waiting for Jim Prentice to arrive. Let me correct that. We understand that he's coming in, and someone is at the microphone, as you can see right now. We're assuming that we're going to hear from the Premier in just a moment. Hang on, I'm being told that we're coming back and we're standing by for Jim Prentice, so still not there yet, but his would be the first concession speech. We expect that to be followed by a speech by Brian Jean, the newly elected member for Fort McMurray Conklin, and the leader, pretty fresh leader of the Wild Rose Party. We're hearing from former party leaders. Oh, hang on a second, Jim Prentice is entering the room, and his wife Karen by his side does not seem pleased. Obviously, you wouldn't expect him to. Not a lot of smiles. We're hearing questions asked. That's our Kim Tenacity. Can we take that sound, Wild? Jim Prentice with not much to say. He's obviously saving his remarks till he gets on the stage there. As we've been saying, this was not the script that he certainly had written in his head. Came in, tried to set a new tone for a party that was in trouble, nearing the end of its dynasty, we now know then. But yes, he seemed to be doing all the right things, the symbols of the Redford so-called entitlement era, he did away with immediately, selling that fleet of aircraft, a small symbolic change with the license plate. But yes, he seemed to be tilting in the right direction. Let's hear what he has to say to the people of Alberta tonight.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when this election was called, I felt that it was needed to provide Alberta's government with the clear authority to respond to the challenging circumstances that we face as a province as a result of the collapse of oil prices. I felt strongly then, and I feel strongly today, that those decisions properly belong to Albertans and not to me as their Premier. Neither I nor the government I led were elected to make the tough choices and the tough decisions that are required by our current economic circumstances. Albertans needed to make those choices, those decisions, and they have now done so and have chosen our collective future. And while I am personally saddened by the decision, the voters are always right in our democracy, and so it is this evening. I congratulate Rachel Notley and the NDP party on their success this evening. Rachel obviously ran an excellent campaign and clearly has the confidence of Albertans, and I have spoken to her this evening and wished her the very best. I would also like to congratulate Brian Jean and the Wild Rose Party on their success this evening, and I have also spoken with Mr. Jean. I would, however, like to speak in particular to the members of my own party, many of whom are here this evening. You know, I've been a member of this party since I was a young man, and I share your disappointment. I share the disappointment of members of our party across the province. I want to thank everyone in the Progressive Conservative Party for their confidence and the trust that they've placed in me over the last 8 months. It has been a trying time for all of us. In particular, I want to thank all of our candidates and the thousands of volunteers who worked so hard on behalf of our party during this election campaign. I have never seen a team of men and women work so hard, and my heart goes out to everyone who worked so hard and was unsuccessful. And Karen and I, in particular, would also like to thank everyone in our party for your unfailing kindness to us during my time as leader, but also during the past 28 days and some 10,000 kilometers across the province. As the leader of the party, I accept responsibility for tonight's outcome. I also accept responsibility for the decisions that led up to this evening. You know, Karen reminded me this morning, actually, that a year ago when I made the decision to return to public life, the outcome was anything but certain. She reminded me that what I said at that time, that I would not have been able to live with myself if I didn't return to provincial politics and do what I could to try to set things right in our province. I told her that I had no intention of living the rest of my life with the regret that I didn't make the attempt, and so I ran. Thank you. Clearly, however, my contribution to public life is now at an end. It is time for me to dedicate my time to the other responsibilities I have as a husband and as a father and a grandfather. Accordingly, I have resigned as the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta, effective immediately. And furthermore, I will step aside as the elected member of the Legislative Assembly for Calgary Foothills. You know, there's no greater fortune in life than to be a Canadian and an Albertan. We are all so very, very lucky. It's been a great privilege for me to serve our province in elected office, and I leave with the confidence that the determination and the resilience of Albertans will overcome whatever challenges we face now or in the future. I wish you all the very best, and I say thank you, good night, and God bless. Thank you. Thank you.
Former Progressive Conservative leader in Alberta here, Jim Prentice. He says he has tendered his resignation effective immediately, that he will not, even though he's been elected, represent the constituents of Calgary Foothills. We're pondering here with the political panel whether that has ever happened before. Certainly we've seen the resignations. A couple of things that stood out for me. First off, in talking about the decision to pull the trigger on an early election, he still insisted off the top that Albertans needed to make those choices. The choices he was talking about was the budget that he had introduced. He also took responsibility for the outcome of everything that led up to that decision and to this evening. So I'm assuming that we're talking about the decision to call the election, the budget. He fell on a sword, Susan. That was, it was a sad individual up there, as he said. He was saddened by the outcome, and certainly not the buoyant candidate that we've seen in spite of the odds in recent days.
No, but he did the respectable thing. He is a man of honor, and he took responsibility. He's not laying it on his caucus or the people of Alberta or anyone else. He's doing what needed to be done. I don't think any of us are surprised that he's not going to lead us. And frankly, I'm not surprised, having chosen not to be the leader anymore, that he's also going to resign his seat in Foothills.
I'm a little surprised by that.
Are you?
I mean, it's a bit take your ball and go home. And with the first part, when he jumped on that grenade, so to speak, that was for the good of his party, and that was very good. But a by-election coming forward like this, that's not going to be a good by-election for the PCs. They're going to go down one seat, and at this point, that's 10% of their caucus. I think that it was a weird mixed message for me in that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he was gracious and composed in a very difficult circumstance. He did not sign on for this. He clearly took responsibility. And, it's a chapter in political history that people will be examining for a long time.
Yeah, in terms of the rise and fall, we thought we'd seen that narrative with Alison Redford, even Danielle Smith.
Yeah.
It was lightning fast. Just a year ago, he points out he was considering running for the leadership, and here he is presiding over the
even looking back as a history of politics, when you look back to the Ontario 1990 election, Bob Rae came in, and their percentage of the vote went up 12%. The percentage of the vote for the NDP here went up 30%. Yeah,
that's remarkable.
The Liberals in that election, they called it early, and Peterson got punished for it, dropped 15%, about what the PCs dropped here. Yeah. But the difference was that everything else went to the NDs.
Yeah. A remarkable turn of events. They called him Grim Jim, his detractors. He was looking grim as he left the room tonight. And we'll have more on the speeches front, obviously expected from Brian Jean. And then Rachel Notley will be going live to that in Edmonton. We'll get back to you guys in just a sec. But first, from The View at PC Party headquarters, and Kim Trinacity has been there all night, has been covering this party for some time. You've been covering leader after leader, it seems, over the last decade since Ralph Klein left the office. And Kim, could you ever have imagined with the quick, lightning-fast rise and fall of Jim Prentice that he'd be standing on that podium tonight and making that announcement?
Well, you know, Rob, one of the first things that came into my mind is, boy, they're going to have to put up a lot of portraits on the walls of the legislature of the last three premiers. It'll be Prentice and Redford and Hancock. So it's going to get pretty crowded along that one wall. But in answer to your question, no, I didn't predict the quick rise and fall when I saw Jim Prentice enter the room. I mean, he was composed, as Bruce was saying, but he looked upset. He really did. He came in there with his wife. He went directly to the podium. There was a crowd in front of him. The biggest crowd we've seen here all night is a crowd that came to hear him give his concessions speech and to say that he was resigning. We tried to get questions to him as he left the podium, left the stage, but he was surrounded by security detail and quickly ushered out the side entrance and did not say a word to anyone else. And he has resigned his newly elected seat of as being MLA of Foothills and being leader of the PC Party. So he has left public life almost as quickly as he entered it.
I remember the spring in his step after the by-election sweep just in October. The following day, he went out to Cochrane for a photo op at an ice cream shop, and he could not stop smiling. He was gleeful. The Wild Rose lost all four of those. They were expected to make some inroads, and then that look on his face tonight, we won't forget that anytime soon. Okay, Kim, stand by. We'll get back to you in a bit. Thank you. I want to return to Stephen Carter, political strategist based in Calgary, currently in Ottawa tonight. And Stephen, let's start with, first off, your thoughts on what you heard from Jim Prentice tonight.
Well, I thought that he started off by saying all the right things. I mean, he needed to accept personal responsibility for what could be a major blunder, obviously is a major blunder, in calling the election when he did. He had 1 year left. I tweeted a couple of days ago, people who say that we just need to give Jim Prentice more time seem to be forgetting that he had another year to call the election. And that was a mistake. I think that if people had gotten to know him a little bit better, if people had understood the problems that are facing the province, perhaps he would have been able to keep more people supporting him. So he did the right thing at the beginning. I think everybody expected him to resign the leadership. Whether that was today, tomorrow, or the next day, that was something that was going to happen. But I've never seen someone walk away from the seat that they were just elected into. We haven't finished counting the ballots. We literally haven't finished counting the ballots in Calgary Foothills, and he's resigning. And the people that voted for him, the thousands of people who voted for him, have some questions that are going to need to be answered. They're going to be going back to the polls for the third time in less than a year with the by-election, the election, and now another pending by-election. And I think that was an abdication of responsibility. We stand up when you put your name on the ballot. You don't put your name on the ballot in good times only. It is something that you have to stand up and you say, I'm going to serve the people of the province of Alberta, the people of Calgary Foothills, because it's the right thing to do, not just because I get to be the premier.
You can imagine the difficult time the PCs might have in finding and recruiting a candidate to run in the by-election there. Let me ask you about the life after politics question, Stephen. Jim Prentice already had his life after politics. He was a federal cabinet minister. Some in this room were talking just not too long ago about the possibility of him sowing the seeds for a run at 24 Sussex. When and if Stephen Harper decides to step aside or is defeated, that he was using potentially the premiership to jump off to grander things. And now life after politics at 58 years old, a lot to give. He left a job that paid him some $1 million a year. What do you expect to see for Mr. Prentice in the days and weeks ahead?
I don't expect to see very much at all. I don't expect that he's going to be able to return to his job at the bank. That's the type of job that you don't quit and go back to. I mean, it's just one of those things that happens. Now, I think he'll be recruited onto corporate boards, but it's not going to happen right away. I think he's going to have an opportunity to spend some time with his family. I know he's very close with his family. I think that's the right thing to do. Spend some time, think about your future in a different way. Jim Prentice is still a young man. He's not, he's got lots of life left in front of him. I just don't think that he's going to be serving the people of Canada in any way, shape, or form as an elected representative moving forward.
Finally, you strategized for this party, as we've discussed back in 2012. They're currently sitting at 12 seats, leading and elected. They're in third place. The future of the Progressive Conservative Party, this once mighty big blue machine in Alberta, care to prognosticate?
There is no future for the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta. What held the Progressive Conservative Party together was power. And what you'll find with the 12 or 11 or 10 or 14 MLAs that get elected tonight, those MLAs are not going to be sharing much in the way of values. Their value that they shared was power. That's gone. So how are you going to see rural north right-wing MLAs working together with some of the more progressive MLAs from the city of Calgary? That's a big question, and I don't think that they're going to be able to do it. I think you'll see some MLAs potentially cross the floor either to the Wild Rose if they'll have them, or cross to Citizen Independence because they won't be able to stick together with their colleagues. This is going to disintegrate, and I expect it will disintegrate rather rapidly.
We're going to have to replace the carpet in the legislature yet again, all that floor crossing predicted. All right, Stephen, thank you. Always plain spoken, always insightful. We appreciate you joining us from the nation's capital tonight. I want to turn it over to Christina Barnes. And picking up on what Stephen Carter was just saying, the reaction is already coming into the fact that Jim Prentice has made it clear that he's not only resigning as party leader, but he's stepping away from the seat that he was just elected to again.
Absolutely. And a lot of people reflecting what Stephen Carter was saying. Those are everyday Albertans saying the same thing. Jim Prentice has resigned both as a leader and as the MLA. Once again, he is ignoring what his voters wanted. Alex says, shocking. Not. Prentice had no choice, let alone desire, to lead the third party. And Mo says Jim Prentice won't serve. He thinks he should only lead, can't represent your constituents. So obviously a lot of people frustrated now. Mike Morrison, a popular blogger here in Calgary, is suggesting golf buddies.
Yeah, was that it right there? Was that the photo op? The extremely awkward photo op that really authored the end of this era. That moment where they tried to bring the two together and they tried to coalesce around the PCs, it turned out
Albertans didn't buy it.
Avoid vote splitting? No, they didn't buy it at all. And I think that image is going to be burned in a lot of people's heads. So thanks, Mike, for pointing that out. Yeah, golf buddies. There's the joke, but there's a dark chapter there for both of those parties and a decision made that obviously ended in folly for one of them. All right, before we move back over to John Archer, I want to hear from another leader. We have some videotape coming up in a second of David Swan. He just gave his concession speech not long ago. As you can see, he has been elected yet again to the riding of Calgary Mountain View. He will represent them in the legislature, unless I'm mistaken, and we roll the tape here and he announces what Jim Prentice did. But you know what? Nobody in my ear has told me that, so I'm assuming he's going to go back to the legislature as currently the lone Liberal voice in the legislature. Think about how far that party has fallen. Let's hear from David Swan.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a pleasure to be here with you tonight. A truly historic night for Alberta. Thank you. Alberta, you've spoken. You've voted for change. And frankly, it's about time. I've worked all over the world, in some tumultuous places. I've never seen this kind of a transition peacefully done. Thank you, Alberta. Thank you, Alberta. I want to congratulate Premier-elect Rachel Notley, whom I just spoke with. I look forward to working with her, advancing the progressive issues for hardworking Alberta families that they've been waiting for so long in this province. I also want to thank Premier Jim Prentice, former Premier Jim Prentice, for serving Alberta. Congratulations to Brian Jean, leader of the Wild Rose Party. Greg Clark, leader of the Alberta Party. Well done. And to Janet Keeping, the leader of the Green Party. What a Trojan, what a hardworking, conscientious, passionate, caring Albertan. Thank you, Janet Keeping. want to congratulate all the new MLAs and the past MLAs who have continued to step up on behalf of all Albertans. It's a tremendous privilege to serve Alberta as an MLA, and we know that you will contribute to the important change Alberta needs in the decade ahead. My sincere thanks, especially to you in the Alberta Liberal Party. You've stood by me all these years. You've stood by Albertans for 110 years. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You've shared the Liberal vision for a better Alberta. And I want to thank especially our hardworking candidates. You know what a challenge it is to jump into an election a year ahead of time, pull together volunteers, find the resources, find the guts to just get out there and know that we deserve better and you are provided the opportunity to try, and you took it. Thank you, men and women candidates. I want to give a special thanks to my colleague in Edmonton, Laurie Blakeman. The longest sitting MLA in Alberta's history. What a woman, a tiger, fearless in the legislature, standing up for Albertans, for progressive values, for the gay, straight, lesbian, transgendered, and queer community, tirelessly, and just taking on the most powerful institutions in the province until they backed down and allowed Bill 202 effectively to go through. Stop. She and Kent Hare, the former MLA from Calgary-Buffalo, have championed that cause, and Kent on many other issues as well. You've stood tall for Albertans. Thank you, Kent. Well, the result is not what we had envisioned. We respect the wisdom and the decision made by the people of Alberta. Alberta Liberals have been here for you for 110 years. We'll always be there for you. Thank you. Finally, I have to thank most particularly my long-suffering wife, who's currently sitting with a dying woman on the south of the city, who's an old friend, and she's spending that time with her at great personal cost to her. I thank my 3 children, Nathan, Kirsten, Tandela, my 10 grandchildren. I can't believe it, but wonderful gift. What a wonderful gift. God bless Alberta. Go Flames, go.
Quick update on the game for those interested. Flames tied it up. They're going overtime 3-3. Johnny Hockey pulled it in there. So let's talk about what you just heard there, and something interesting that Stephen Carter touched on. This is the end of the PC party as we know it, he said. What about you, the former executive director of the Alberta Liberals? Is this the end of the Liberals as we know it?
I think so. I think that speech was kind of indicative of the problems that the party has had in general. It was weird. It was disjointed, and I'm struggling for words. It was almost like it was a valedictory speech, like, I won. We got rid of these guys, but you came in last, David. I mean, it was a very strange speech.
Tied for last, I believe, if the Alberta Party's still on the board, yeah. Susan, you were questioning why we were giving him so much time. I think the answer to that is that may be the last Liberal leader speech we ever roll out. You've been around politics for a long time. You were in Redmonton for a long time, living and working there. The demise of the Liberal brand, is it all just gone to the NDP?
Well, it would have seemed so. I mean, clearly we didn't get any of it, so it's gone somewhere. No, I mean, the NDP got votes from an awful lot of people today who've never voted NDP before. Yeah. So, yeah, they've got a lot of those have got to be Liberal votes.
Okay, just a quick heads up for those watching at home. We are waiting for Brian Jean to take the podium in Fort McMurray, where he has been elected for the riding of Fort McMurray-Conklin, one of those seats stolen from the PCs. A PC cabinet minister tonight, just looking over at the remote board. He's not there yet, so Bruce, quick word on Liberal leader David Swan, the lone voice in the legislature for the Libs.
Well, you know, like Corey said, he has presided over the demise of the party. I think the interesting question will be, it would make sense that the one Liberal and the one Alberta Party person would get together and actually cooperate, except that they hate each other. They absolutely hate each other. Greg Clark cannot stand David Swan, and they all fought against each other over the issue of running candidates.
Yeah, Greg Clark was standing at Edmonton Centre with Laurie Blakeman saying, I'm happy to be here with the Liberal incumbent. She's running for our party too. Yeah. Next thing they knew, the Liberals were running a candidate in Calgary Elbow, and they in turn, the Alberta Party, ran a candidate.
I mean, it makes sense that they should combine forces, but I can't see it in terms of their personalities doing it.
As Corey said, some weird stuff going on that end of the spectrum. So we'll see where things go, but with 2 seats, it's not going to make a difference with a currently projected 53-seat NDP majority government in the province of Alberta being held to account by a Wild Rose opposition at this point, 20 seats. And as I say, John Archer, we're waiting for Brian Jean to speak in Fort McMurray. In the meantime, you have a look at the female candidates who are running in this campaign.
Yep, something that we want to look at. Remember, it wasn't too long ago that Alberta had a woman as a premier and a woman as the leader of the opposition. Tonight, the NDP, they have elected 19, and they're leading in 6 with 24 women likely to be heading to the legislature as NDP MLAs. The PCs, only 1 leading right now. That is a drop of 16. And the Wild Rose Party, they've elected 1, and so that's a drop of 2. And the Liberals, of course, losing Laurie Blakeman, they're down 1. So the net gain here is +5. 5 more women going to the legislature as MLAs than there were in the legislature at dissolution. Rob?
Well, that's got to be a good thing, Susan Elliott. I remember when you were talking with me about Jim Prentice, newly minted Premier Prentice, forming his cabinet. One of the points you made was not enough women. So I would expect in a Rachel Notley cabinet led by a female premier, a woman with strong roots in her party, and a lot of great candidates to choose from, that we'll see a lot of them represented in cabinet.
Well, I hope we do. I hope we do. We're still only at 27 out of 87, so we're still a long ways from having half the legislature being women, and I know that that's a goal for a lot of women. But yeah, I hope that. I hope some of these new Democrats that we've elected are indeed capable people.
Sarah Hoffman, chair.
Yeah, Sarah Hoffman is certainly one.
Boards.
Yeah.
All right, hang on. I just want to backtrack here and go back to Fort McMurray. Hold that thought.
Sure.
Where Brian Jean is entering the room. Brian Jean? Who's Brian Jean? That's what people were asking just a couple of months ago as he was declaring his intention to run for a party that a lot of people had written off in this province. The Wild Rose reduced to just 5 seats in the legislature, and 3 of those candidates, only 3 of those candidates, the incumbents, decided to run again. Of course, many of them running under PCs, under the PC banner, and most of those losing tonight. So Brian Jean assumes the leadership and starts his campaign from essentially a zero ground game. He had no idea what he was getting into, I'm sure. As we heard a little bit earlier, the party coffers were a little thin. But you know what? He gave it the old college try, and look where he's ending up here. It looks like he'll be the leader of the official opposition. Are we in a position to make that call, decision desk, yet? All right. Still waiting for word on that officially, but it is certainly trending in that direction. And Brian Jean is heading up to the podium in Fort McMurray, the newly elected member of the legislature for the riding of Fort McMurray Conklin. He just defeated a cabinet minister, one of many Wild Rosers who did that tonight. Let's have a listen in.
Wow, what a campaign. What an incredible election, and what a change in Alberta. It's unbelievable. Now, folks, before we look at where we are today, we should look at where we were just 5 months ago. In fact, just 2 months ago. How about just 1 month ago? Wow. And where we are today, it's very, very unbelievable. You know, it was just a few months ago that pundits and elites right across this province said that the Wild Rose Party was dead, that it was gone, and this juggernaut was going to take over the province. And how many seats was he going to get? 79? 82? Well, we've seen a complete change in Alberta. We've seen a real change. And Wild Rose proved them wrong. That's right. Yeah. Now, do you know why? the reason why they were wrong is because they forgot the important thing about politics and the important thing about the Wild Rose, and that is that the Wild Rose Party is not about one person. It's not about Brian Jean. It's not about any single MLA. It's about all Alberta. We are a movement in Alberta. We are a grassroots movement from the people, from the communities that make up Alberta and make us such a great place. It's a set of values and a set of principles. And when you focus on principles and stick to those principles, you can accomplish great things. And we have accomplished a great thing tonight. Now, not only did we keep our 3 seats that we had before this election, the 3 seats, the 3 incumbents, but we have actually more than 4 times the amount of seats we started this race with. 4 times. And not only that, what makes it so exciting is that we're not just in southern Alberta, we're not just in the fringes of Calgary, but we're right across Alberta. If you look at where the makeup of Wild Rose is now, we truly represent all Albertans. And it's just 37 days ago that I took over the leadership of the party. And I don't know if you know what it's all about in politics, but when you take over the leadership, you take all the problems and all the solutions that party has. And it's been unbelievable, the difference. 37 days, and we have prospered mightily. We have done amazing things. And I think the one lesson we can all take from this is the lesson for the future. And that is that Albertans and all voters right across this country will not stand for backroom deals, governments that are play favorites or cronyism, or just when it starts to stink a little bit. You have to know that voters will not put up with it. And that's the lesson for all governments, that when you give away golden handshakes and money that doesn't belong to you, you will pay the price for that. And we understand tonight that Albertans are looking for a difference. And you know, we were a very effective opposition, the most effective opposition in Alberta's history. And you know, starting tomorrow, we're going to show Rachel Notley a little bit of that opposition. But in all honesty, I would like to congratulate Rachel Notley. She's run a very good campaign. She's represented her party very well. And the next 4 years are going to be interesting, to say the least. There's a lot of challenges in front of us. But I think that we can, and I've been clear since the start of this campaign, that I can and we can work with her on ideas to reform our government and other ideas that do great things for our province. Because it really is truly about governing for our province and making sure that Albertans have the best quality of life in the world. And that means that Alberta has to work together, all Albertans have to work together, and the government itself needs to fight for all Albertans. But let there be no question that Wild Rose will stick to our guns. When I said that we won't raise taxes, I meant we won't raise taxes. When I said that we would fight for health care and seniors care, I meant that we would fight for health care and seniors care. I also plan on helping balance the budget, and that means we have to be a fierce opposition and make sure that we keep as much money in your pockets as possible. Thank you. You're welcome. Albertans did vote for us because of our ideas and our principles, and we won't abandon them because we don't give in to the temptation of power to corrupt our principles. And it's our ideas and our principles that have made us successful. They truly have. And those are the ideas and principles that will make our children's lives better and our grandchildren's lives better. We have to make sure we manage the economy today, balance the books today for their future. And I know that it might be tough because it is an NDP government. It's a majority. But we will work to keep them on their toes. And we will do that. Now, as far as Mr. Prentice goes, as you know, I did know Jim in Ottawa, and I want to thank him for his service, because it's no small thing to be a politician. Even though many people will say things about you, the truth is it's a very difficult job. And to be the Premier of the province and a leader of a party is not a small job either. And I'd like to thank him for his dedication to the people of Alberta, because Jim Prentice tried his best. He was at the wrong place with the wrong party at the wrong time. But the truth is he tried his best, and I want to thank him for that, and I wish him every success in his private life. I also want to say the best to his wife and his family as well, because it is a challenge to them all, because they all become part of politics, as my family can tell you, whether they like it or not. Now, to Dr. Swan and to Mr. Clark, I also say to them, I welcome them. I've received a call from Mr. Swan, and Dr. Swan, and I think we're going to have a fun time in the legislature, all the parties. But my goodness gracious, we're the official opposition. We've got about 20 seats. Now, I don't know if there ever has been in the history of Alberta an opposition leader from Fort McMurray. Wow. It's, is that call for me? Excellent. Well, and I would like to say to all the candidates, it's no small thing, as I said, and all the candidates, we had just about a full slate. We missed one signature, but right across the province, all of the Wild Rose candidates, I want to thank them. All the candidates, indeed, were great. And you know, if I could say this, I want to congratulate my candidates. Not one of them screwed up. That's pretty good. In politics, that's pretty good. So that's amazing. And I'd like to congratulate myself. I didn't screw up either. So. No, but honestly, I do want to thank all of the people that helped put this campaign together. I'd like to thank all the people in Fort McMurray that gave me their trust, and Tanny. You know, we really appreciate it. We are moved. We will work hard for you. We will be honest, and we'll stand accountable. Our challenge here is, you know, it's going to be tough. Our region is much different than the rest of Alberta in many ways, and similar in some. But the truth is we have a lot of challenges, and we're going to have to make sure we work with council and work with the municipality to fulfill all those challenges, and make sure we take our case to Rachel Notley and the NDP, because it will be necessary to work together and do great work to, you know, serve the people of Fort McMurray, get an infrastructure in place, fix our health care, our seniors care, get Willow Square in place as soon as possible. And you know, the other thing that I think is an important lesson here is when the people speak, when the seniors speak, listen. My goodness gracious, listen. Because otherwise people like me get back into politics and we're all going to see some change. I owe a lot to my volunteers. They've been with me for a long time. They have helped me get elected in 5 elections now, and I'm very humbled by their continuous support of me. It is something else to see, especially when we've gone from Ottawa to Alberta, and now we have a new challenge ahead of us, which is going to be very unique in that our government has not been in power before. But it will be something to see, and I'm looking forward to it. Tomorrow, we're going to get back to work. The Wild Rose is going to get back to work. We have a caucus meeting to get together, and we have to talk about how we're going to set up our critic portfolios and get everything in order. I will tell you that we have been doing it for some time, but let's just have a celebration tonight. I've had a great 30 days, actually a great 45 days, visiting all Albertans right across the province, and I can't tell you how humbled I am to be here today. So I promise you, I will work hard, I will stand accountable, and I will continuously take the fight for our priorities to the government in Alberta, in Ottawa. Thank you. Now, that's the formal presentation. I do want to talk about just a few people very quickly. My mom, Frances Jean, my fiance Kimberly Micheludi, hold your applause please. My son Jamie, who helped drive me around, and my nephews Phil and Dwayne for doing the same thing for quite a while. The rest of my family who puts up with me and helps me. And
all right, as Brian Jean thanks his mother who gave birth to 11 children. I believe Jean is the youngest of them. We see the scene in Edmonton unfolding. And speaking of ties to parents, Rachel Notley doing what her father didn't have the chance to. He obviously, if you're not familiar, having passed in a plane crash in the 80s before the NDP soared to 16 seats in the legislature to become the official opposition for the first time, she secures the reins of power in this province some 30 some odd years later, does what her father couldn't, what many never thought they would see in this province. She is now the next premier. She's the premier designate, the premier-elect of the province of Alberta, Rachel Notley. She's entering that room now, somewhere in that mass of people she is, I'm told. I haven't been able to see her yet. Not sure who will be there with her, but she has a teenage son named Ethan. She has a teenage daughter named Sophie. Her husband, Lou, who's been active in party politics, a colleague that I was speaking with who knows him quite well, described him as a brilliant strategist. Both of them have ties, Rachel Notley and her husband, Lou, back to BC politics in the NDP there in the 90s. She's entering the room here to throngs of people. They are thrilled with what has unfolded tonight. Hope so high going into voting day today. A lot of people in this province, including those who told the pollsters they were going to vote for the NDP, and Rachel Notley, they kept citing time and again, did not believe that the NDP would actually succeed, not in terms of forming a majority government in this province. John, what are you, I mean, you've been covering politics for some time here. You've been covering Rachel Notley since she was elected as an MLA in 2008. What are you expecting to hear from her, aside from the obvious tonight?
Well, this is just a scene that for many of us, we never expected that we would see. When Rachel Notley came to the legislature, when she won Edmonton Strathcona after Raj Panu stepped down as the party leader in 2008, it was clear eventually, someday, she was going to be the leader of the NDP.
She has it in the genes.
But there was never really an expectation that she would become Premier of Alberta, and Premier with a majority like this that few expected tonight.
Yeah, it is an extraordinary story. You know, she's been telling on the stump everywhere she goes that she's not a city slicker. She was not born and raised in Edmonton. She is from the country, Fairview, I believe, in that area. She's familiar with the horse. She's down home, and you know what? She's very likable, and that's really what drew so many people to her message. Not the ideology. People wanted to gravitate to someone they could believe in, they could trust, and they're doing so tonight.
You know, it really did strike me as well, Rob, that I remember day one of the campaign when the candidates in Edmonton lined up behind Rachel Notley. It was a photo op pretty much just north of the legislature, so you could see the legislature in the background. And she started off her speech with what is now a familiar refrain. She said it everywhere, every single time.
For Premier.
She said, "My name is Rachel Notley, and I'm running for Premier." And I remember thinking to myself, whoa, wait a minute, really? What? And that was 4 weeks ago.
And that was juxtaposed up against Brian Jean, who was saying at the same time, look, I'd be happy to form the official opposition. The Wild Rose doing that tonight. He grew the seat count, but the real story in Alberta tonight, no doubt about it, Rachel Notley and the NDP, the Orange Crush, the Orange Wave, call it what you will, it has swept this province. You can see the seat count there, 54, 10 more than they required for a majority. She's in there somewhere. It's deafening. Let's just have a listen for a second. All right, down in front signs. We'd like to see the Premier-elect for the province of Alberta, and we're going to hear from Rachel Notley, Alberta's next Premier, right now.
that change has finally come to Alberta. New people, new ideas, and a fresh start for our great province. Now, you know, Albertans are a gracious people, and tonight I want us to be gracious because I want to begin by talking a little bit about my colleagues in this election. My friends, thank you. I've just spoken to Premier Jim Prentice. Now, Jim Prentice has served our province in many roles for many years, at the provincial and at the federal level, in government and in business. And I want to thank the Premier for the enormous contribution that he has made to our province. Whatever he will do in the next step in his journey, I know he will be thinking about how to build Alberta. I've also just spoken to Brian Jean, leader of the Wild Rose Party. Now, Mr. Jean stepped into his job as leader only a few weeks ago, and he now takes up his role as leader of the official opposition. And Brian, I want to say, through your courage in the face of family tragedy, you have earned the respect of every Albertan, and I'm looking forward to working with you. And I also spoke with Dr. David Swan. And to you, David, I want to thank you for your contribution and your commitment to your party and to our province. And to everyone who ran as a candidate in every party in this election, and the thousands of volunteers who supported them, I want to thank you for your dedication and your service. And let me say to my amazing campaign team, our candidates and our volunteers all across this province, thank you for your extraordinary efforts. And you know, I'd like to just say one thing about our candidates and our elected MLAs. I haven't done the math yet, but I think So I haven't run the numbers yet, shall we say. But what I think is true is that we have elected the most women in any government caucus in the history of So that's kind of cool. So, but most of all, to the people of Alberta, I want to thank you for putting your trust in our party. I am deeply I want to say that I am deeply humbled And I want to pledge to you, the people of Alberta, that we will work every day to earn your trust. You know, it's been said before, and it's true. You can't go wrong if you stay in touch with the values and the common sense of Albertans. In this province, we're optimistic, we're forward-looking, we're entrepreneurial, we're community-minded, and we are careful with the family budget. And that, my friends, is the kind of government that we will work to be. I'd also like to say, to Alberta's job creators, great and small, in the energy sector and in every other sector, our government will be a good partner, and we will work with you to grow our economy and to secure a more prosperous future for every Albertan in every community. Together, we need to start down the road to a diversified and resilient economy. We need, finally, to end the boom and bust roller coaster that we have been riding on for too long. And it won't happen overnight, but we must start, and we will. So to our province's skilled and professional public servants, to the teachers who inspire our children, to the nurses and the healthcare professionals who care for the sick, to everyone who gets up every day and contributes to a better province, we are looking forward to working together with you. And to Alberta's Indigenous peoples, the trust that we have been given tonight is a call to be better neighbors and better partners. And I am looking forward to consulting with you and learning from you. Now, Albertans have voted for change. And one of the changes that they voted for is a new kind of respect and a new kind of relationship with their government. Albertans across the province have told me that they are tired of old, entitled approaches that leave them out of conversations about their livelihoods, about their services, and about their families. Whether you are a business leader, a union leader, a municipal leader, someone who leads in our civil society, or whether you are a plain old, just great, wonderful Albertan, let me say this to you. Our legislature belongs to you. The government belongs to you, and you will be treated with respect. And I need to say that I'm also looking forward to working with Prime Minister Harper on the many issues. Because, we're kind of part of this country, folks, So I am looking forward to working with Prime Minister Harper on the many issues and projects that engage our province with the federal government. Looking forward to partnering with all of Canada's premiers on many, many issues, including the need for a national approach to the environment and Canada's work with my Premier colleagues as well to build Canada's energy sector so that we build bridges and we open markets instead of having a black eye. That is what we're going to do. So to every Albertan, you know, the weather is what it is, but I'll tell you this, spring has arrived. A new day has begun. You voted for change, for better public health care, for better schools, and for good family supporting jobs, and we will answer your call. You know, the challenges are great, and there will be bumps along the road, but I pledge to you that I will always work to keep your trust. And of the values that built this great province, hard work, grit, and faith in a better tomorrow, they will endure in your new government. So let me just conclude by thanking my family for the love and the patience and the support that they have always given me. Tonight, for those of you who can't hear, that's Lou, not Boo. Tonight, I want to say, tonight I'm also thinking about my mother and my father. I know that my mother would be completely over the moon about this. I think my dad would be too. I'm sorry we couldn't see this. This really was his life's work, but I say this, I know how proud he would be of the province that we all love. My name is Rachel Notley, and I want to thank you for electing me as your Premier.
You're looking at Premier-elect Rachel Notley. She'll be the 17th Premier of this province, the first NDP Premier in Alberta's history. As you heard, she referenced her mother and her father, Grant Notley there, the former leader of the NDP in Alberta. Talking about carrying on his life's work. She didn't dwell on the matter, but poignant moment for sure. That's her husband, Lou Arab, next to her there. Those were the chants that you were hearing. Lou, 51-year-old lawyer, Rachel Notley, will be Alberta's next Premier, and she was hitting all the notes that you would expect in a speech from someone who is riding an orange wave. She reached out to all communities across Alberta, reached out to the business community, reached out to those who voted for her, who voted against her, reached out to the leaders of the other parties, had some fine words to say for outgoing Premier Jim Prentice. She did touch on wanting to work with Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Notably, she did not mention that she's received a call from Stephen Harper, a congratulatory call. But this is all about Rachel Notley. It's the Rachel Notley Show right now as she stands on the stage in Edmonton and just soaks up that adulation. A lot of pauses in that speech, a lot of moments just to take it all in. You know, John Archer was touching on earlier that she was elected in 2008. She's relatively new to politics, although has been around it for most of her life. I don't know. Eventually we'll hear from her in a scrum Did she ever envision this day? I know a lot of folks in this province who support the NDP would have hoped for it. Could it have happened? When would it have happened? Would it have happened in this election campaign? I think if you sampled them 6 weeks ago, not a lot of them would have said, yeah, sure, I put my money on a Rachel Notley victory in a majority government NDP. As she exits stage there, I want to bring in the political panel that's been gathered with us. She did. She sounded to Bruce Cameron like a premier. She hit all of the right notes, did she not?
Yeah, and I think that the way she came across there is the way she ran her campaign. Mm-hmm. It was very positive, genuine, strong. Hit all the right notes, as you said. They ran an error-free campaign, but it wasn't even that. They ran an inspiring campaign, and clearly Albertans resonated to it after so much turmoil over the last 5 or 6 years.
So much turmoil. We were just talking about, is she the 16th or the 17th premier in Alberta's history? And Susan, you pointed out, I don't know, we've been through 5 in the past several years. It looks like we have one for at least 4+ years in Rachel Notley. You're the PC on the table here, on the panel here. You tell me about your thoughts on that speech.
Well, first of all, she was gracious, and I'll give her credit for that, because David Swan was anything but gracious, and Brian Jean not particularly gracious either. So Rachel did sound like a premier. It was easy to see from that speech why people took to her, why they liked her. So, I have to kind of reluctantly say that was probably a pretty good speech.
Probably a pretty good speech.
That's as far as I'll go.
Bit of a barn burner.
Yeah, well, I mean, this might be my bias coming in, but I wanted to applaud at the end. I'm sitting here in a studio. It was a really, really good speech. And what I found interesting was the overtures she made to communities that you don't necessarily hear a premier make overtures to in their first speech. All Canadians, which she was going to bring along Albertans and Canadians as a whole. I thought that was interesting. And there's that old saying, only Nixon can go to China, right? Well, we have had trouble with market access. Maybe we need an NDP premier to get market access.
Yeah, that was a fascinating thing, building bridges to open markets as opposed to trying to do the bidding that many people saw of the oil industry. Their policies are not that radical when it comes to the oil and gas sector.
Yeah, well, except that they have said that they are not going to pursue Northern Gateway and they are not going to pursue Keystone. That's 2 of them.
No,
she said she supports Keystone and she parks her money at Energy East as being the viable option.
And Trans Mountain, she supports that too.
Kinder Morgan.
She supports those 2, but she did say she was not going to go down to Washington and fight for Keystone.
Right.
And she definitely said she thought that Northern Gateway was off the table.
Lost cause Keystone, and she's concerned about the environmental impact. She's not the only Albertan on whatever side of the spectrum.
And in fact, in a lot of those things, she reflected public opinion. People think that project's dead. It's just there's too much opposition to Northern Gateway for it to work. So she's going to focus her efforts on Trans Mountain and Energy East.
But they're a lot further down the road. They're years away.
Let's hold off on the policy dive in a minute. I want to get to what the new face of Alberta is going to be in just a minute here, because it has changed significantly, and I think a lot of Albertans will be waking up tonight and tomorrow morning going, okay, exactly what are we in for? First, though, I want to say goodbye to viewers across the country who've been good enough to join us on this historic night here in Alberta, an amazing night here in Alberta. Those who have been watching on CBC News Network, you're now going to be handed over to the network and the CBC National Newscast, The National, with Peter Mansbridge. Thank you for joining us. As for the rest of you, our coverage continues here on CBC Alberta on the main channel. A lot to dig into tonight on an historic night, as we say. The NDP securing its first government and a majority government here in Alberta. Rachel Notley, as you just heard, the premier-elect. She'll be the 17th premier. She alluded to her father. Before we dive into the policy stuff, and I promise we'll get there because it's a fascinating piece of the puzzle, I want to head back to Edmonton and Edmonton HQ for the NDP. And I'm looking at our reporter, Marion Warnica. She seems to be in a bit of a conversation with one of our producers. Are we prepared to take Marion? Marion, can you hear me up in Edmonton right now? Yeah, she says she can. It's been really loud up there. I can't blame her for putting her earpiece in right now because you've been overwhelmed with the events of what's been going on. All right, Marion, take it away. Give us a sense of that room. We saw some of it, but you've been talking to people on the floor. Are they pinching themselves? I see a hug over your shoulder right now. A big, long squeeze.
Yeah, one of the people I spoke to tonight was 85-year-old George Winter. He was sitting just on the riser here with me, watching that amazing quite thought-provoking speech from Rachel Notley. The crowd was going wild, and he was just sitting there taking it all in. George remembers and grew up in Alberta in a time when it was actually the social credit era, and he said he traditionally votes PC. He has for decades, but this time around, he voted NDP, and he's here tonight, he says, because her platform makes sense. And of course, those are some of the points that she covered in her speech tonight. She tracked over again that familiar territory that we've heard from her in previous speeches, talking about health care, talking about protecting education, also talking about tax reform. And she reassured businesses, not sure if you caught that point there, but talked about being a partner with business, and basically trying to reassure people that she can be trusted with the economy. Another moment that drew quite a reaction from the crowd here was her comment about math, of course, playing up on that comment from Jim Prentice during the debate, math is difficult, which became the very notorious hashtag math is hard. So she said, we haven't done the math yet, to large applause and laughs from the crowd, but she said we believe we have elected more women than any government caucus. So lots of highlights from this speech tonight. But probably the most passionate we heard her was when she said, this province belongs to you, and she said we're going to work hard every day to earn your trust.
It was a speech worth waiting for, given that a lot of Albertans are probably just now wanting to learn a lot more about Rachel Notley. Thank you for breaking it down as you did, Marion. And yeah, math is difficult. The first bit of math that Rachel Notley will have to face in the coming days is, okay, I've elected, or I have more elected female candidates than any other caucus in Canadian history. Where do I go with cabinet? Are they going to be represented in cabinet? You would expect that they would. It's a policy discussion we'll save for the panel. But for now, straight to the reaction out there. A lot of people couldn't be in that room tonight, but they were feeling a part of that speech, certainly.
Really, really liking it. A lot of the comments coming from women. I don't know if there is a connection to the number of women that are now going to Parliament to represent us. This is from Catherine. Congrats to Rachel Notley for classy leadership and a strong campaign on this historic night. Alberta will be well served. Certainly that speech and what she had to say resounding with those listening. Mira says, what an incredible and inspiring model for leadership, authentic, natural, smart, and gracious. I'm excited. Monique says, Alberta has put our trust in you. Don't let us down. So it will be interesting to see how things go forward over the next couple of days. Rob, one young man saying he was sorry that he wasn't going to poli-sci class. He wanted to nerd out on it for the next couple of days. I think maybe all of Alberta will be nerding out on it for a little while, talking about it for quite a while.
Safe to say we're all political junkies for the next little while. Thank you, Christina. You've been doing a fantastic job tonight. All right. What time is it in Ottawa right now? It's 2 hours removed. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Stephen Carter, are you still there? Really?
I have no idea what time it is. I can't believe this night. It's been quite a night.
Was it worth waiting up for that speech from Rachel Notley? Could you have scripted it any better than that?
She hit all the notes. I mean, the moment where she paid tribute to her mother and her late father, I mean, that was spectacular. And the audience played along. The audience in the room played their part. And I think that the audience following along on Twitter and online and watching the broadcast here tonight also we're very interested in seeing this new Rachel Notley, because this Rachel Notley on the speech tonight wasn't the Rachel Notley we saw in the debate. She hinted this at us at the debate. But if this woman can continue to stand up and be this natural in front of microphones and in front of audiences, I think that there could be a real connection between her and a lot of Albertans.
She's performed pretty well in the legislature too, and the cut and thrust begins, and it will, no doubt about it. I'm sure she'll be able to handle her own. Before we cut out and let you go catch some Z's, I want to ask you about the dynamic in the legislature right now. Wildrose opposition, we heard from Brian Jean before Rachel Notley, and yeah, he was full of praise and congratulatory on a night like tonight, but he also talked about being a fierce opposition, a loyal opposition. How's that going to play out, do you think?
Well, I think that both the Wildrose and the NDP have a problem, and that is that their financial plans are mostly make-believe. Rachel Notley is going to have to go in and try and make her make-believe financial plan work within the legislature, and Brian Jean doesn't have to make it work. He can just stand on the opposite side and do what the Wildrose has been doing for a number of years now, and that's just simply saying that they can manage to balance the budget by cutting your taxes and increasing your spending. And I'm not sure how that works, but we're going to find out how it works in the next legislature. It'll be interesting to see an NDP government try and do what the PCs were unable to do, and that's balance the budget and balance the spending priorities of Albertans. We want a nice healthcare system. We want a nice education system. We want a nice social services or human services system. All those things cost money, and none of us are particularly willing to pay for it. As Jim Prentice found out when he raised our taxes 59 times and was shown the door very politely tonight. It'll be interesting to see what the NDP do.
Yeah, it will be fascinating in the weeks and months to come, and that means we'll be talking again and again. Stephen Carter, thank you again for taking the time from Ottawa tonight.
Thanks very much for having me.
All right, I want to throw it back over to our Kim Ternacity, who's with the PCs tonight. What remains of the PCs, Kim? It looks like they're packing up behind you. It's staff of the hotel stacking chairs. That's never a good thing on election night.
Well, they're carting away the furniture pretty quickly here, Rob, at PC Party headquarters for election night. But a few people did drop by, some defeated candidates. In fact, I think the story now is who's left and what are they going to do. But we spoke to a number of them. We spoke to, first of all, the executive director of the PC Party, Kelly Charlebois, who said I asked him what went wrong, and he said, I'm not going to answer that yet. He didn't have one answer. Maybe he's going to dissect that for a while. They're all in shock still. Nobody said anything bad about Jim Prentice or about his decision to call the election a year early. So that's Kelly Charlebois. He said the party is still resilient and has a lot to give and many members. I don't know how supportive those members are.
Good thing on election night.
Well, they're carting away the furniture pretty quickly here, Rob, at PC Party headquarters for election night. But a few people did drop by, some defeated candidates. In fact, I think the story now is who's left and what are they going to do. But we spoke to a number of them. We spoke to, first of all, the executive director of the PC Party, Kelly Charlebois, who said I asked him what went wrong, and he said, I'm not going to answer that yet. He didn't have one answer. Maybe he's going to dissect that for a while. They're all in shock still. Nobody said anything bad about Jim Prentice or about his decision to call the election a year early. So that's Kelly Charlebois. He said the party is still resilient and has a lot to give and many members. I don't know how supportive those members are going to be now that the party has been reduced to so few seats. We also spoke to defeated candidate Gordon Dirks, who was the previous education minister. He said he's been in a lot of elections, and I think if I've got this straight, he said he's won 6 and lost 5. So he might be just slightly ahead of the game. And he said it wasn't, in his words, he said it wasn't necessarily a vote for the NDP, but he attributed his loss and the loss of so many of their seats to the split on the right, the Wild Rose and the PCs. So he gave the NDP very little credit. He said it wasn't a vote for the NDP as much as it was a vote split. I also spoke to Jay Hill, former Conservative member of Parliament, who was appointed by Jim Prentice to a job as a government rep to the Western Alliance with the other provinces, with Saskatchewan and with British Columbia. He told me that he is going to resign his position because, well, he's not going to hold that job with an NDP government. But he also was talking about how it wasn't necessarily a vote for the NDP, but against something else. But he didn't go into the reasons why there was that sentiment and feeling, as there clearly was tonight in the election results. Rob?
Okay, Kim, while you're still able to stand there, we appreciate you taking the time. They're going to start carting away your riser in a second. Kim Ternacity live at PC headquarters tonight. I want to throw it back over to John Archer. And just a couple of footnotes. You see the Alberta Party on the board. Greg Clark elected. He is in the legislature. David Swan as well will be representing the PCs, looking for a new leader now. And yes, Brian Jean leading the official opposition, and of course Rachel Notley. Before we get to the breakdown of this board, your quick thoughts on what you heard from Rachel Notley tonight.
Well, it was a good speech. I am somewhat caught about this though, because I'm much more used to hearing Rachel Notley speak off the cuff.
Right.
I haven't quite frankly, over the years, I haven't heard her deliver too many speeches. Obviously, she's very good at speaking, but she is also a very personable person. She has a quick wit and a quick sense of humor. That is universal. Everybody will tell you that. I'm not being partisan when I say that. And so it was a good speech, well delivered, and how can you not deliver a good speech when you got a crowd like that that's cheering you on?
Yeah, she was inspired. Okay, let's break down some more of the vote tonight, which tells the story in this province.
Well, this one is a total votes board, and look at the NDP, 585,000 total votes. Now, let's put that in a little bit of perspective for you. In 2012, the Tories had 567,000 votes. So the NDP outdoing the Tories in 2012 with 585,000 votes. The PC vote 404,000. That is stunning when you think that right now they're leading and elected in 11 seats, and yet more than 400,000 people voted for them. And in 2012, the Wild Rose Party, they captured 442,000 votes. Here they are tonight with 352,000 votes. And they have right now 4 more seats than Danielle Smith won in 2012. The numbers are just staggering when you look at them that way. The Liberals obviously have dropped off severely. They had 125,000 votes just 3 years ago, down to 61,000, but they did elect their interim leader, David Swan. But I think what's really staggering about these numbers is just obviously how high the NDP have climbed, because they had 125,000 votes 3 years ago. But for the PCs to still have more than 400,000 votes.
And only sitting at 11 seats.
Sitting at 11 seats right now.
Yeah, I tell you, John, as soon as you flash that big board up on the screen there, I heard the murmuring over on the panel, Bruce and Susan in particular say, look at that. So let's start with you, Susan. What does that tell you?
Well, I guess it's what Corey said earlier, is that the PC vote is efficient until it isn't. Clearly, the splits went against the PCs. Now, we won't know this until we kind of nerds like me sit down tomorrow with all of the numbers, but it looks like we must have lost a lot of seats by just a few votes.
Well, this nerd, and I say with affection, has already been breaking down the numbers.
Yeah, I could see that coming before, that in fact, 28% of people voted for PCs and only turned up into 11 seats. 24% voted for Wild Rose, and it's almost double the seats. And the reason is that the Wild Rose, although Brian Jean made a point that we represents all of Alberta.
Yeah, not so.
No, in fact, if you look at where they are, 16 of those 21 seats are rural ridings.
Not a single seat in a city.
Fort McMurray, 2 in Fort McMurray, 1 in Airdrie.
Edmonton, Calgary, not a single seat.
Not a single seat in Calgary or Edmonton. So what they did is they were able to capture those seats with a slightly lower vote. So their vote is efficient in that they can capture those seats with maybe a lower population.
They were running in a third of the province, and that's how you do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's how, frankly, the Liberals hold on to 5 seats before, 9 seats prior to that, with lower percents of the
But really, I mean, I think Brian Jean has a lot to be proud of in terms of running this campaign on a shoestring and coming up with the official opposition.
But you ask if the PC party is dead. I don't see how it can be dead with 400,000 people supporting it. And apart from the votes, Corey and I were saying in the break that there are an awful lot of people, volunteers and donors and all those kinds of people who are progressive conservatives. And clearly we're having a setback. I mean, let's,
a setback.
So the understatement of the night award goes to.
Before we dive down into more of that, it is Rachel Notley's night, and I want to hear a little bit more about what she had to say to the media, to the reporters gathered around her after that speech we just heard.
We got to get started on it.
What's the #1 policy issue, though?
Oh, I think that we're going to go back to the fundamentals of our campaign. We're going to be committed to protecting our healthcare system, making sure that those 12,000 kids have teachers in September, and doing what we can to create jobs in Alberta. So the fundamentals of our platform is what you're going to get.
What is your message to investors who say that they aren't going to invest in this province with the higher corporate tax rate with NDP?
My message is that I look forward to working collaboratively with all job creators in Alberta. I've always been very committed to ensuring that we maintain a competitive economic environment here and a competitive investment environment. And I am quite confident that our policy and our platform will allow us to do that. And I'm very much looking forward to reaching out and talking with business leaders from all sectors to ensure that we can work together to build and continue the history of economic prosperity here in Alberta for Albertans.
All right, so a lot of generalities there, but you heard her reference her platform. Those who didn't pick up the platform at the start of this campaign, let's dive down to that, Corey. What's the big headline coming out of the NDP platform in terms of what Albertans can expect?
I mean, if you want the Coles Notes version, it's you're going to pay a little more and you're going to get a little more. They talked about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. They're going to give money to education to meet up with the increase in the size of classrooms and whatnot. And healthcare, long-term care, big investments in long-term care committed by the NDP.
Increase in personal taxes as well for some.
Yeah, I was doing the math in my own head about the hit, but you know, I think it's what Albertans wanted. They elected a government that said, I want to raise your taxes, and that in itself is pretty remarkable.
That's not actually quite what they said. What they said was, we're not going to raise taxes on people that they consider to be middle income. They're going to let somebody else pay, and who they're going to let pay is the corporations that are going to pay 2%, 12% instead of 10%, and anyone earning more than $120,000. So, Corey, you've just told us how much.
Hang on, but you know what? I was talking to a PC strategist just before the election, and he said, up from Edmonton, and he said, you know, all Jim needed to do was put in 1% this year, 1% next year corporate tax. That would have been off the table. One of the things that was very popular in this campaign was the sense that, well, if everybody's going to share the pain, why not the corporations?
Spread it around. Yeah.
And what it did is reinforce that image that Jim Prentice was representing those corporations rather than the people. And so, I mean, we'll see higher corporate taxes.
All right, we're also going to see a royalty review, it sounds like.
Yeah,
some form.
That is very tricky. I mean, people want it, but you want it until it really causes a lot of uncertainty, and then you go, well, maybe we didn't need to open that.
And I think Rachel understands that they've put a pretty clear delay on it. They've said as long as the industry is hurting, we're not going to have this royalty review. But there will be good times again, and at that point, I think it's fair to say we're getting 18% royalties right now.
First order of business, a new budget. They didn't pass the budget. They ran on the budget as a political document. Susan, new budget, NDP, are they going to implement all of this all at once? What would you expect?
Well, they've made some pretty big promises, and they've got a pretty big mandate to do that. So yes, I think they're going to have to come through. They said that they're not going to implement any of the tax increases, you know, the 59 fees and that kind of thing. They've said they're going to keep the $1 billion in health care. I think that
so the health fee is still going to stay in.
No, they're not going to implement the premium, but they're going to leave the $1 billion in that they accused the Prentice government of removing. They're going to hire new teachers for 12,000 students this fall. They're going to raise the minimum wage to $15. All of these things are going to be hard on business. And they're going to need a lot of revenue to pay for all of these things.
Well, one silver lining in terms of the revenue situation, which is quite ironic, when you follow the price of oil, it hit the very important psychological barrier of $60 today.
Right.
And it passed through that fairly quickly. And the differential here, which really goes right to the bottom line in the budget, has narrowed to a lower differential than we've seen since 2012.
All the
some
more
good
reason
signs.
Why Jim Prentice should have waited another year, perhaps.
Should have waited.
Stand by, get your final thoughts ready, because we're going to come back to you in a second. But first, I want to hear final thoughts from some of our reporters out in the field. Brian Labby shaking his head or nodding his head. That means you're ready, right, Brian? We can talk to you tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to review something that Brian Jean touched on, and it's the floor crossing theme that went through this campaign. The frustration, the outrage. One quote that I pulled out that I was just looking for: we don't give in to the temptation of power that corrupts our principles. This is really what this campaign was about. It was a reflexive reaction to what happened there, and there was outrage that drove them to, well, an historic outcome for them tonight, their greatest seat count. What can you add to that for us this evening?
Well, I think the best line from Brian Jean came during his speech when he said, you know, he wants to congratulate his own candidates for not screwing up. A clear reference to the Lake of Fire incident that sank the party back in 2012. So that was an enjoyable moment. He also went through all of the congratulatory notes for obviously Premier-elect Rachel Notley, saying that he is going to hold her feet to the fire, standing up for Wildrose principles, low taxes, balanced budgets, and government accountability. He also went on to say a few words about Jim Prentice. Of course, they were former caucus mates in Ottawa under Stephen Harper, so he said that it's not an easy job when you represent people, when you serve in office, obviously as the Premier and of course as the leader of a party, so he had some kind words for Mr. Prentice. And obviously the whole notion here that Mr. Jean is trying to get across is that Wildrose represents all areas of the province, but I know the panel was touching on this. Well, winning a seat in Airdrie doesn't necessarily mean that you represent the city of Calgary. So still, it is a pickup of 4 seats when you look back from 2012, but still, it is mostly a rural-based party. So that is something that the party was unable to overcome when you look back at the results in 2012.
What does it mean for the right of centre vote? Will we see PC members who are still standing across the floor? Is that Brian Jean over your right shoulder there, Brian?
It is. He's
still
mingling.
posing for pictures,
He's
isn't he?
still mingling. Yeah, he's one of the last guys standing here, you could say. Yeah, he's really taking it in. I mean, the room is obviously cleared out. More reporters and camera people in the room, but Brian Jean is still there taking it in, watching some of the coverage on TV. So it is a big night for him, and he acknowledged that he was the leader of this party for only, just over a month, and basically took it from 5 seats after the floor crossings and the defections up to 21, possibly where they stand right now. So it is a victory for the Wildrose Party.
Certainly
and the new leader.
A lot of pride in his voice when he's at the podium there, representing Fort McMurray, as he said. I think it's the first leader of the official opposition from Fort Mac. Okay, Brian, we're going to free you up. Go get your souvenirs from Wildrose headquarters tonight. Speaking of, have you purchased a Motley Crue souvenir shirt yet? Not that you would compromise your journalistic principles, Marion Warnica, but those things are going to be going like hotcakes, I expect. You can make a couple of bucks on eBay down the line.
I think so, and I think all of us watching tonight have felt like we've watched history. Certainly, the people in this room are still feeling that way, and they're still celebrating. We just did another rough count of the people in this hotel. Just to give you a picture, we're at a major, large hotel, the Westin in downtown Edmonton. This room was expected to fill with about 1,700 people. It's full. And you go outside of this room, and the staircases are full of people, the hallways are full of people, on a few different floors here, throughout the lobby, throughout the bar area. We did a rough count. There's easily more than 2,000 people here celebrating. And as you walk through, like what came to my mind was an orange rainbow. People are wearing those colors, but the diversity of the people wearing that orange color is extremely diverse. You've got people, old people, younger people, children, families were here. You've got people in bow ties, people in turbans, people with nose rings. It really runs the full gamut. And they are hugging each other. They are pinching themselves, I think, and they're saying to each other, gosh, we really did it. This really happened tonight. So it's quite a scene.
Do you have any sense? They say the campaign for the next win begins the second after your last win. Any sense of the work that lies ahead for this party in that room tonight?
Well, that is something that Rachel Notley signposted in her scrum after her big speech. There were a few questions about the inexperienced candidates. We know that there were a few students running for this party. And Rachel Notley said, we're looking forward to learning from their enthusiasm. She said, yes, I have thought about their inexperience. That's something we're willing to deal with and willing to work with them on, really. So this is a challenge she says her party's up for.
Going to make for some interesting political coverage in the months ahead. Marion Warnica, we're going to sign off with you for the night. Thank you. You've done some excellent work tonight. All right, so speaking of political coverage, John Archer covers the legislature. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of interesting new faces to get to know, but in the meantime, we're still trying to determine the one outstanding riding out there tonight, and it has been a horse race all night.
And Rob, the polls have been closed for 3 hours and 20 minutes, and we still have this on the board. Chestermere Rocky View. Leela Ahir for the Wild Rose Party has a lead of just 35 votes over Bruce McAllister. This Chestermere Rocky View riding drew a lot of attention during the campaign, but not because of these people, but because of Jamie Lall, who wanted to be the Tory candidate. He was running as an independent. Didn't work out for him tonight, but with 83 of 92 polls reporting in Chestermere Rocky View, Leela Ahir has a slim lead over Bruce McAllister. This one is not done yet, and it's the only one that's left. Just a little while ago in Lesser Slave Lake, that was one of the last races to report. The NDP carried that riding, and so Pearl Callahayson, a long-time Tory MLA, will not be going back to the legislature. And Rob, that's just one of the things that, as someone who covers the legislature, I never thought that I would see. Pearl Callahayson is not supposed to lose, but you know, this is why we have elections, and clearly there were so many losses tonight by Tory cabinet ministers, longtime Tories. This orange wave really did move out of Edmonton clearly, and it went right across the province and down into Calgary, where a lot of people didn't think that they could win.
Yeah, it was a remarkable evening. Thank you for your work as well, John. It's tough telling the stories of 87 different ridings and all the candidates in it. That's a lot of research on display tonight. John Archer did a fabulous job. Speaking of which, we're going to get final thoughts now from our political panel. You guys could go here all night. We should just continue to live stream. Lock it on.
Yeah, that's right.
For the political junkies. Corey, needless to say, you're the progressive voice on the end of the spectrum.
And the guy who said this was going to happen.
You did. Yeah. You've been talking about that for some time. You were insistent in the orange wave, and we all looked at you and said, he's 33. What does this guy know? Well, apparently, he knows a lot.
This is the thing. I'm 33, and this is the first time I've seen a change in government. I'm happy to say that my daughter, who's not quite 1, before her first birthday, has seen a change of government. And what that says about this province, I feel tonight, you know, beyond the partisan and yay, I'm happy my team won and all that, you know, we moved from being a democracy in theory, to me, to a democracy in practice, because I actually saw an election lead to a different government. And I've never seen that before.
That's remarkable.
And I'm excited.
Your daughter didn't vote, did she?
I hope not.
All right.
I hope not. She's got terrible judgment.
Susan, the game of politics is played with winners and losers. Inevitably, a dynasty has to come to an end. And maybe those around the key figures in that dynasty don't see it coming, but when it does, it's typically pretty rapid in this province. There's some rebuilding going on, and there are also some knives out tonight. You want to touch on that before we leave?
Well, we have to acknowledge that you know, hindsight is 20/20, but clearly there were some mistakes made here, right? Ranging from running on a bad news budget, the early election, no corporate tax increases in that budget, embracing the floor crossers, positioning Jim Prentice as a CEO. These were all errors, and then you know, not to get too much into inside baseball, but the campaign itself had some tactical errors and some logistical problems and so on. So as much as you know, the NDP won this election, we also helped them win this election, I have to admit, and that will probably lead to some knives coming out. Jim Prentice has avoided the biggest knife by leaving the room before they became unsheathed. There is some anger about the fact that he's resigned his seat as well as resigning the premiership, and we're going to be going right into a by-election. Okay, not everyone's happy about that.
Thank you, Bruce. You've been covering these sort of elections 26 years. See nothing like it.
No, I mean, it's been amazing. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the CBC Return on Insight poll was within the margin of error.
The pollsters were right.
All
right.
Yeah,
now,
that's an important point.
Now, but I have to point out, in all honesty, that I interpreted the results when you look at the way in which they split out. I said many times that it would be very difficult to translate that into seats unless there was a huge breakthrough in Calgary. And I suspected that if there was a big turnout, that might happen. I'll be interested to see tomorrow what the turnout is. It's always pretty much the last number you get. If the turnout, I suspect, given these numbers, was above 55%.
Whatever the case, the turnout turns out to be historic in terms of its result. Thank you three for sticking with us throughout the night.
Thank you.
Insights always appreciated, and we'll have conversations in the days ahead. And thank you at home. It's been a long night, longer than we expected. Although a historic night here in Alberta, those are always a pleasure to cover as a journalist, and I'm hoping that it was a pleasure for you at home to come along for the ride with us. Yes, we have a new premier. Her name is Rachel Notley. Yes, we have a new government for the first time in more than 40 years. It is the NDP ruling Alberta. Thanks again for watching tonight from everyone here at the CBC, and we want to make sure that you tune in tomorrow. Listen to your local radio shows. The coverage continues there. Good night.
New people, new ideas, and a fresh start for our great province.
Accordingly, I have resigned as the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta, effective immediately. And furthermore, I will step aside as the elected member of the Legislative Assembly for Calgary Foothills.
And to be the premier of the province and a leader of a party is not a small job either. And I'd like to thank him for his dedication to the people of Alberta, because Jim Prentice tried his best. He was at the wrong place with the wrong party at the wrong time.
Alberta, you've spoken. You've voted for change. And frankly, it's about time.